Okay.
Thank you, Colton. Well, good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Education Committee. I feel a little, I'm so proud of a speech to read. During COVID, we had a 3-page book to read to you all before we could start. So, we'll go ahead and call our meeting to order. And we do not have an on-site packet this morning, so we'll go on now to additions and revisions to our agenda. Chair, I have no additions or revisions. Okay. We'll move down to announcements. Dee is absent today as well as Michelle, so we'll wish them a good day. And I'd like to welcome Ruth Bonowitz to our to our committee. This is her first official board meeting to attend, and I'm not officially a member of the committee yet, but we'll get that going soon, hopefully. And we're glad you're here today. Thank you for being present.
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to announce to the committee and board members, you've got to turn your travel stuff in before you leave today. It's the end of the fiscal year for us, so we have a very short turnaround time. So I'll be hounding you. And Michelle said also, if you could put your signed motions and your travel in this. Sound? And we can make sure you have something. Okay. Thank you. All right, thanks.
Absolutely. Okay, so any other announcements? Let's look at our minutes from March. That he's ready. We'll entertain a motion.
I move to approve the June 13th, 2023 Education Committee.
You might have to adjust the motion.
Okay, I move to approve the minutes from the March 2023 Education Committee meeting.
Second. All in favor, signify by saying yes. Yes. Any opposed, signify by saying no. Motion carries. Okay, Janelle? Yes, give us our update.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, I just want to point out, I think, just a couple things here. One is we have several new program updates again. One of the updates is just Rasmussen University has moved locations. Jamie Magana, who's at the Overland Park campus, Topeka is their satellite, but it's just their satellite that's moved. So they used to be on 70, now they're off of 470 to the south. But they have a little bit bigger space now, and but Jamie is still over the program. Salina Area Technical College had a change. Their director is moving, so Naomi Petro is taking over as the director of nursing and allied health there. Johnson County Community College, the ABN program, our longtime program director Karen Lomatina will be retiring at the end of June. And effective July 1, Dr. Lori Shank will be taking over as the full-time director for that program. The University of St. Mary notified us that effective May 4th, Dr. Karen Kidder would assume responsibilities as the chair for the Division of Nursing and their BSN program director until their search is complete. They're searching for a new director, but she is going to be their interim. And Newman University, their nurse anesthesia program, both their director and assistant director have returned to full-time practice. So they have a new director, Kenyatta Brent, and a new assistant director, Peter Strube. So still continuing to see lots of changes, and any help that if they reach out to me, I direct them back to some of you in terms of some of the mentoring. So our directors have always been so good about helping each other out. We had 3 other site visits since the March meeting. One of those was for a new LMHT program. We'll talk about that. Site visit reports. I just wanted to point out in the report, I did do a little kind of a 5-year look back of petitions, and in the past, we've kind of talked about them, but I wanted to kind of bring that back. In the last 5 years, we've had 177 petitions. 19 of those are current. We had 76 of those, which is a little less than 50%, but it's about 45%, expired without completing. That's continues to be about what we see. We had 76 who completed, but of those 76, we had 39 who tested and failed, 32 who tested and passed. And then we had 4 who completed and never tested. Never quite sure about that one. 2 completed and tested, but were never licensed in Kansas. So I don't know quite what happened there. And then we still have 1 that's waiting to test in that. So I just thought it was interesting to bring that back. We talked it before. I have some changes I'm trying to make to the petition and the way that it's submitted, but I don't know at some point whether we talk about maybe needing to update our petition guidelines just in terms of the conditions that are applied to those. We're seeing some differences since COVID. It's a little harder for them to find a class to audit. There are online classes available. I'm not sure the original purpose was that, but anyway, those are some things that have come out of looking at those petitions and looking at some of the issues that causes the non-completion. And I just wanted to kind of point that out for everyone. The education annual reports are in process. As of my last update, we had 16 of our 59 complete, 3 of our 7 graduate complete. And we have until the end of June to get all of those in. We are again working with NCSBN on that. We've done it's been pretty smooth. I've only had 1 issue with not getting something open, and we did have a big question come up, but I think it got resolved and we got everybody notified. And so I think that's continued on a smooth path there. Just a couple of reminders. I'm sure everybody's aware of, but the Next Generation NCLEX started on April 1st, which was after our last meeting. I've gotten a few comments and anecdotes since that started. We've only had 2.5 months, but it seems like we're seeing some good pass rates for those who've taken their tests so far. So excited to hear from students that they are feeling like it's not as bad as they thought, and that we're seeing the pass rates for some schools that have been struggling a little bit, or at least for the beginning. So we're hopeful that that will continue to be the case. But I think it's good to be watching, and we'll have some more information on that as NCSBN looks at that and comes out with what they're seeing overall. The Kansas Nurse Educator Conference and Teaching Institute is coming up in July. Just to know, July 19th through the 21st, that's going to be held at Newman University again. I believe that registration is already open. And then just a reminder, the NCLEX conference for this year, NCSBN is going to be held virtually again, and it's on September 21st, and registration is open for that as well. And I think, unless there are questions, the rest of it is there, but those were just the high points I wanted to give. Any questions? Okay.
Our site, we don't have a need for an executive session. Aware of. So, okay. Moving on down to site visit reports, Neosho Community College.
Yes, we did a visit to Neosho Community College for their PN level of their bi-level ADN program. Or I guess first level of the ADN program. Did that visit with Patty Palmetto. And let's see, looking at strengths, we found great technology in the classroom. They're set up for a lot of collaboration between the students. They have 2 campuses. Most of the teaching is done separately, but they have a lot of ability to Zoom back and forth and to include those classes together. The library, great resources and study areas. They actually have a 24/7 access for their evening and weekends that has been very positively commented on by the students. Their advisory board speaks very highly of the program and the instructors and their students. The program director is open and easy to work with, was their comment. Administration speaks very highly of the program and their success and are very supportive of the things that the nursing program is doing. The clinical site RNs and managers also spoke very highly of the program and their students' eagerness to learn and their work with, they do a lot of some of the smaller rural community health hospitals and they have students there. They have a new building at their satellite in Ottawa that has a simulated hospital. So that technology has really been an asset for them. It was commissioned by a hospital architect, so they can actually use that if they needed, if COVID or happened again or something like that, they could actually transition that and use that as extra hospital beds, just the way it's designed and set up. I thought that was very interesting. Opportunities, the program evaluation, new separation per section for their PN done in the fall of 22. We just asked them to be able to see the changes both before and after. So as they develop that to maybe go back and so that shows how the changes were made and then what the results of those changes have been. And also make that more a part of the faculty minutes so that there's flow through with that. Strongly recommended that observation hours be included with the breakdown of the clock hours. Not that there's a lot, but they included everything else. And so we just, because observation is part of our regulation, asked them to include that in the breakdown. Students feel there's more opportunity for transparency regarding their testing and grading in the program. Some of them feel like the faculty is not open and they can be seen as not welcoming. We talked about that a little bit. I think some of the burnout and stress with faculty has kind of translated. And so some efforts are going to be made to help faculty learn to, or and helping them maybe support them a little bit more in what they're doing. The handbooks are very clear on the testing and grading. It's just more in talking about it and being able to approach and ask questions about it. So we talked about that and very open to that feedback. Recommendation, we recommend reapproval of the PN program for 5 years.
I move to approve the site report visit for Neosho Community College PN program and reapprove for 5 years.
Okay, we have a motion.
1 second.
Okay. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying yes.
Yes.
Any opposed signify by saying no. Any abstentions? Motion carries.
Our second one was with Cambridge Children's Mental Health, which is part of the KVC Health Systems. They came forward with a request for a new LMHT program. So this is the first initial that I've been a part of. And so Rebecca Sander and I did that visit. The Cambridge Children's has more than one site in Kansas, but they're planning to do their LMHT program at their Hayes campus location. So that's where we did our site visit, was in Hayes, and they have a new building out there. So they've been up and running there for a little while, but they're continuing to make improvements there. The KVC administration is very committed to getting the LMHT program up in place for both their internal staff candidates and for external applicants as well. They do have a process set up that we looked at that would include a way for their employees to go through the program because it's going to be done there on site. That they would also have a way to include those that are not on staff to come in and do the education program for the LMHT and to work them into that. They have several qualified staff members who can guest lecture for them and support the program implementation internally. Again, I've mentioned the new building space. They moved to an updated facility, improved IT, large conference room, expanded care facilities. They have a large outdoor client area, which makes it really nice. They're already working with nursing programs as well. So that's a nice opportunity for them as well to get their mental health clinical experiences and have some pediatric experience as well. There's lots of letters of support from the adult mental health providers to help round out those educational experiences since it is a children's facility. So they have a lot of support to get that adult side as well. Opportunities, we mentioned a watch for use of nursing in the handbooks and policies. There is some basic nursing instruction as part of that program, but it is an LMHT program and not a nursing program. So we just wanted to ask them to watch how that was used. Asked to clarify the admission readmission process in the handbook, just to make sure it's clear. It just needed some clarification to make it very clear what that was, and the grading and evaluation process the same way for both theory and clinical. There was just a small correction to the total number of hours. We talked about some verbiage for the mission and vision. Right now, it kind of looks like goals, and maybe to talk with KBC or even Camber about using that as part of their mission and some other policies. So those were just opportunities. They're, again, a new program. So the recommendations that we came out with were to complete the LMHT student handbook with all the needed policies and then clarify the policies that we talked about, particularly the admission, and then submit that to the education compliance officer prior to approval. Need to have all the clinical contracts signed. They have their own facility, but then they had some others. They had all the letters of support in one other contract, but to get all the clinical contracts signed before they started. The program evaluation plan, they had a description and a template, and they asked them to work on that to show how the program will be measured. We didn't really see that. So to work on that program evaluation plan and what measures they're going to view to show the success of the program, and then to send that template. It didn't, obviously they haven't started yet, so it just needs to have some idea of what they're working toward, and to send that to the compliance officer prior to approval. And with those things, we would recommend approval of the program to admit up to 10 students each admission period after recommendations are met. And I will say that since we did the visit, all 3 of these things have been done and submitted to me and reviewed. And everything that we asked them to do was responded to. So we have a new handbook with all the policies in there, looks great. We have a template for the program evaluation plan, and all the, I think as of a week or 2 ago, I think all the clinical contracts are signed. And I do know our folks are here if there are any questions, but so the recommended approval would be to admit to 10 students each admission period, that they've met all the recommendations at this point.
Would the leadership stand up and introduce themselves of Camber KBC?
Didn't mean to put you on the spot, but it's like we're here.
Yeah, I'm Taylor Ziegler. I'm the Vice President of Nursing for Camber. I'm Crystal Waltman. I'll be the nurse educator for the LMHT program.
Well,
The main person for the program.
congratulations, you are setting a paving path for the state, and this is the first program we've seen come forward for LMHTs in a very long time. So thank you for your dedication to mental health and behavioral health, and very impressive work.
We're excited. Yeah.
Any questions?
Madam Chair, I move to approve the initial site visit report for KBC Health Systems Cambridge Children's Mental Health LMHT program, and approve to admit 10 students each admission period, with the recommendations now being met.
Thank you. We have a motion. Is there a second?
I second.
Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying yes.
Yes.
Any opposed signify by saying no. Motion carries. Congratulations.
Okay, yes, Butler Community College, again, we did a visit for their level 1 of their bi-level ADN program. And Dee Monenblust was the other site visitor, also Michaela Heiston, did an orientation visit with us. She is orienting to be able to do site visits as well. She has the qualifications to do that. So we had the three of us with this visit. Butler has a fairly large program, so it was nice to have the extra hands too. Strengths identified, very strong support from administration for the faculty and the program. The nursing department has a dedicated IT person for the nursing division, which we thought was fabulous. Actually has an office both places, but main office there in the nursing division. So they have a lot of great support. They have 2 full-time simulation faculty and 3 part-time for their simulation. They have a separate building where their simulation happens. And it's a really nice facility, lots of space, lots of good use of that for both levels of the program. And I think maybe even some community efforts, again, another place where they can actually take that simulation hospital and use it if the community needed it. They have enough support and it can function that way. I thought that was pretty remarkable. A lot of faculty teamwork and collaboration. There's been a lot of changes over the last few years for Butler. So they're just doing really well with their teamwork and collaborating, and the students filled out as well. They're team teaching, so they have 2 to 3 faculty per class, so really good support for the students in all of that. They have a clinical learning center, where their simulation lab is too, but a lot of resources for the students to be able to support their learning in lots of different ways. The students do say they feel they are very supported and set up for success in this program and would absolutely recommend it to other people, which we always like to hear from the students when they say that. The partnerships with local clinical facilities and the local high schools and colleges, other colleges, they have a lot of collaboration. Their nursing program administrator, she provides a lot of stability for this program, a lot of good contact with the administration. They include her. So there's a lot of good communication just within the college. A lot of people who are not involved in nursing. We talked with a lot of faculty who were part of a faculty senate, and they're all very aware of the program, even if they have no students who, their classes may not have students who are in the nursing program, but they are aware of it. Great partnership with their general education faculty. They have some intercurricular discussions that they do every year. They have a plan for student success. They have a success coach that it's assigned if any exam is not passed. They're assigned that coach, and that coach stays with them throughout the semester. And then if they continue, if they feel like there's continued, they will keep them on through even past that semester if they feel like it would be appropriate. Couple of opportunities. We talked about create a standalone policy that's outside of the dress code to clarify the student versus employee role. We talked a lot about that. It's kind of buried in there. It reads more like a dress code. So we just wanted to make sure that student versus employee policy was very clear when they're a student, when they're an employee, and what they're to make sure that that's clear in there. Expand and provide detail on the faculty minutes to help close the feedback loop for the program activities and the use of the data. There's a lot of data. There's a lot of things they're doing. It's just a little hard to follow in the minutes. So to really capture that so they can show how those changes are occurring and tie it to their program evaluation. Recommendations, identify a method or process to maintain faculty files with the KSBN required information. The few things that we're missing. And because it's a regulation and because it's required, and we'll talk a little bit why that gets to be really important in a little bit. And to submit that plan or process to the KSBN Education Compliance Officer by September 30th. Per our current regulation, preceptors are not allowed. Butler does at the moment use preceptors in their PN program. So we just had to draft a plan to remove the preceptors by 1/1/24. We don't know if a change is going to happen or not. It has been recommended, but at the current time, it does not meet regulations. So just to draft that plan of how they don't use them extensively for PN. They have a couple of facilities that they've worked with and it's not even all their students, but we asked them to do that in light of the regulation. And then recommend reapproval of the PM program for 5 years. Questions?
Motion. Madam Chair, I move to approve the site visit report with recommendations for Butler Community College PN program and reapprove for 5 years.
Yeah.
I'll second.
Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying yes.
Yes.
Any opposed signify by saying no. Motion carries. Kansas Wesleyan.
Okay, one more site visit. So Kansas Wesleyan has a bachelor's BS with a major in nursing. That was they used to have ASIN accreditation, some issues when that changed over. So when CCNE accredited them, they had a 5-year approval. And we had said our last site visit that we wanted to come back when ASIN came back to do their visit. They came back to do their visit during our last board meeting. So we ended up going at a separate time, but we did do that follow-up visit. Dr. Michelle Burdishaw and I were the 2 site visitors for that program. We did that in April 4th and 5th. Program continues to show very strong support. They are gathering some. They've had definitely had some increase in their numbers, which has been good. One of the things we found to be very interesting, Kansas Wesleyan has a lot of student athletes, as many of the private schools do. They have about 95% of their students that they're on scholarship and participating in sports. One of the things that's nice about what they do is when they give them that scholarship for their sports and they go into nursing, there's not always sometimes they end up not participating in the sport because of the requirements of the program, but Kansas Wesleyan will continue to support them with that scholarship, even if they cannot play the full 4 years, but they give them that support. One of the things that the program has done is they have a new athletic director that they started meeting with all the athletes, the coaches and the clinical coordinators and the students to talk about all of that and to talk about so that the students don't feel like the coaches are going to be demanding. It was just a really nice process, and you could hear it from the students' perspective and the coaches, even when we had a meeting with some of the faculty, that's a process that's done very well for them, and they understand the expectations of the nursing students better. And so there's less conflict when that happens. Usually the conflict is because the student really wants to continue with their sport, but ultimately it's, do you want to be a nurse or are you going to play? So, but that's just, I think, a wonderful strength for them. Students are very active in the governance. They even advocated for change. They advocated for a change in their exam schedule. They argued it well, they presented it, and they got that change happening. They were very satisfied with that process and that they have a way to do that. Very supportive administration. Faculty's salaries are very competitive. That's one of the things they've done. They've tried to look at market value, and they've done some work with their other within their financial division to really bring that faculty role into a more equitable salary for those faculties. So they're very happy about that as well. The general education faculty are very collaborative. They're invested in the vision of the nursing department. Kansas Wesleyan renovated a building that's across the street from their main campus for the nursing program. Last time we were there, it was we could see what the potential was, and we got to see the end result this time with the classrooms and the new simulation lab and the lab facilities and everything. It's and offices for the faculty. So it's a really nice space for them, and they've got a lot of alumni support coming through there as well. So a lot of the success of that is from their community and from their alumni. They've done, yeah, I'm just saying they have the support, they call it the Nursing Education Center. So that is a huge strength for them right now in terms of recruitment as well. So opportunities to update the process to ensure all KSBN documentation. In this case, there was just one missing piece, but again, just to remind them that that process needs to be in place. Recommendations, continue to work on strategies to improve first-time pass rates. And I just say that they had kind of a blip this year. They've been doing really well with their small numbers. Again, they had eight students this time. So it did take a little bit of a blip. We've already received an improvement plan from them. And it was part of their response to us on the sub-study. So very well put together. And you can tell the faculty is already talking about what they're going to be doing to support that, and recommend reapproval for time period of national accreditation.
Any questions?
Madam Chair, I'd like to I move to approve the site visit report for Kansas Wesleyan University BSN program and reapprove for the time period of national nursing accreditation.
Patty, we have a motion. Second. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying yes.
Yes.
Any opposed signify by saying no. Motion carries. Move down to our new business and our major curriculum change request. Well, try to get about halfway through these before we can got a long list here.
We do. Yes. Yes.
I'm getting Henry, Chair of the Department of Nursing. I've brought Dr. Tanya Smith with me. She is the Assistant Department Chair and serves as our BSN coordinator. We have been making some changes, of course, to align with the Board of Regents Gen Ed program. And in doing so, we reclaimed our last 60 hours. If you recall, we used to have 52 hours towards nursing. And in doing that, it's made us really just look at student quality of life. We haven't implemented that program yet, but we know that we're very lab, clinical, and simulation heavy, which are 1 to 2 instead of 1 to 1. And we already have a case where students just hit that junior 1 semester and are not used to studying or the time that it involves. So in doing so, faculty really had to sit down and look and say, hey, what can we do to try to stop that just wall going up and students having a breakdown because of the fact that it was just so overwhelming. So in doing so, I'll let Tanya talk about a couple of the changes that we'd like to make.
So at the J1 level, their first semester, we would like to take the nursing professional development course, which is a 2-credit-hour course, and make it hybrid, so that they would meet together on campus about 3 times a semester, and the rest of it would be delivered online. And that would just help free up their schedules a little bit, so they don't feel like they're spending every hour of every waking day at Stroop Hall. And then similarly, we would like to propose the research class, evidence-based practice, which is in the senior 1 3rd semester. We would like for that to be delivered virtually. And that would just help students who do a lot of self-scheduling with clinicals in that semester, have them a little bit more time to be able to have some flexibility. Both of these courses are non-NCLEX style. Their assessments are through assignments. There's no high stakes testing. And so we feel like it could be delivered hybrid and or virtually easily.
I was very proud of the faculty. I gave them a directive, find classes to go hybrid to balance the student load. And I don't think anyone wants to go hybrid with their classes because they love that student contact. However, our outcomes have shown that our students do as well. Hybrid, we actually did better during COVID. I think we were an unusual college that we did better in COVID than when we're not in COVID. So I think that we have a group of students who are used to, a lot of them come with 30 to 60 hours from high school. They're used to that online learning. And I think this will just help them be able to balance a little bit better.
Question.
Madam Chair, I move to approve the major curriculum change request from Fort Hays State University BSN program to change nursing 313 and nursing 322 from in-person to virtual or hybrid.
A motion.
I'll second that.
Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying yes.
Yes.
Any opposed signify by saying no. Any abstentions? Motion carries. Thank you very much. Barton Community College, Indian. Good morning.
Renee Skelton, the Director of Nursing at Barton Community College, and our major curriculum change sounds a lot like Fort Hays's. We, with the K-Board review of all the gen eds, we have just taken a look at all of our classes, and our spring semester, our students kind of have that same wall. There's just a lot of clinicals with MedSurg 4 and mental health 2. During COVID, we had some mental health sites not let us in, so we were kind of scrambling it and looking at hours for that clinical piece. And we have a lot of mental health clinical hours, more probably than we need. We started talking, the faculty actually presented this as a area to maybe reduce credit hours. And our students see so many mental health patients when they're doing their med-surg clinicals, their OB clinicals, their ER clinicals. The didactic for our Nurse 1208 will stay the same. There'll be 2 hours of didactic theory, but we'll cut the clinical from 2 hours to 1. We also have a developmental psych prereq, a general psych prereq. We have nursing, mental health nursing 1 at our PN level, and then this class in the ADN level. So they have a lot of opportunity for mental health. So this proposal is just to decrease the clinicals for that spring semester.
I move to approve the major curriculum change request from Martin Community College ADN program to decrease mental health nursing from 4 credit hours to 3 credit hours.
Thank you. We have a motion.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, signify by saying yes.
Yes.
Any opposed, signify by saying no. Any abstentions? Motion carries. Thank you very much. Baker University BSN program.
Sounds like a theme today. Our NU 381 Pharmacology 2 course, we're proposing to make it a hybrid course to again help allow students to save time and costs and travel. We also are adding some pharmacogenetics and care of transgender individuals into the curriculum of that course. And
Any questions?
Madam Chair, I move to approve the major curriculum change request from Baker University BSN program to restructure NU 381 pharmacology from in-person to hybrid.
Thank you. We have a motion.
I'll second that motion.
Any discussion? All in favor, signify by saying yes.
Yes.
Any opposed, signify by saying no. Any abstentions? Thank you very much. Thank you. University of St. Mary's.
We have 2, the BSN one, I think we have first.
Absolutely.
Good morning, I'm Dr. Karen Kidder from the University of St. Mary, and we are requesting some changes to our BSN program. Like most programs, I think students have had some issues with drug calculation, so we're adding a 1-hour drug calculation course online that the students are required to pass, and that final test at 100%. And then because of the issues with, and maybe some of it was COVID, the students didn't have a lot of opportunity to get in practice skills. We're adding a half credit course specifically for labs, not of course, but the lab integration into our major clinical courses, MedSurg 1, 2, 3, and maternal child health. So the students will have that extra time of practice in there.
And just so you know, in your packet, those were presented as 4 separate But I think the presentation of what it is could be put into one motion if that's acceptable. I think that's the way we've written it, so that if you're planning to approve all of them, they could be put into the same motion instead of doing the 4 individual. Unless there's any question.
Madam Chair, I move to approve the major curriculum change request from University of St. Mary BSN to RN program to 1, add 0.5 credit hours of lab to support maternal child health course concepts and specialty skills. 2, add 0.5 credit hours of lab to all medical surgical courses, NU AT 340, NU AT 441, and NU AT 542. And 3, add 1 credit hour online course, drug calculations in nursing, to the required nursing curriculum. Total nursing program credit hours would change from 56 to 59.
We have a motion?
I second.
Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying yes.
Yes.
Any opposed signify by saying no. Any abstentions? Motion carries. Do you have the graduate program?
I think that Dr. Von Pullen is somewhere out in. If she's not, I'm prepared to take it on, but
Colton, can you help us?
What's her?
Dr. Von Pullen.
Ginger Von Pullen.
She's on it.
For some reason, I thought they said in person. I apologize. I
Got 'em.
believe it out. Thank you, Colton.
Hello, can you hear me?
We can.
Okay, good. Thank you for allowing me to join by Zoom. I am the director of the graduate program at University of St. Mary, and we have a few changes to our curriculum that I would like to request. We are moving our F&P program to the online format starting this fall, which has already been approved. But with that, we are requesting some curricular changes to help with the flow of courses, manage the coursework more easily for our students, and also increase our clinical hours in line with the NTF criteria guidelines. Our coursework will still be able to be completed over the 2-year timeframe, and these changes will not increase the overall program credit hours. So an overview of the requested changes: we would like to remove our NU 641 statistics for healthcare course. It was a 1 credit hour statistics course, which we felt was not adequate for the graduate level. So to replace this, we are requesting that our students take a prerequisite 3 credit hour graduate statistics course prior to starting our program. If they're unable to do that at a different institution, we do have a 3 credit hour stats course at University of St. Mary that they can take prior to taking the research course, which it is a prerequisite to. We also request to remove our NU 611 informatics and nursing course. It was a 2 credit hour informatics course, and we realized that we already had a lot of the information and learning objectives for informatics in our other F&P courses. So we looked at the new essentials and made sure that we had incorporated everything into our other F&P courses if it wasn't already present, so that information and curriculum is absorbed in the rest of the program courses. Another change we're requesting is to increase our overall clinical hours. We are currently at 720. We want to increase to 780, and we'll do this by adding 60 clinical hours in our advanced health assessment course. Doing so will change the breakdown of credit hours for that course. The course will still remain a total of 5 credits, but 1 of those credits will be clinical and 1 will be lab, with 3 remaining as didactic. With that increase in clinical hours, we also would like to shift our primary care courses a bit. Currently, we have 4 8-week primary care courses with 180 clinical hours in those. 8 weeks is a really short time frame to do a full primary care course with 180 hours. So we would like to make 3 16-week primary care courses, each with 240 clinical hours. That will lengthen the time the students have to get those hours done, as well as give more time for them to really absorb the content. And then lastly, we had previously incorporated their evidence-based project into their clinical courses, and that's proved difficult for students to really manage the coursework as well as the evidence-based project. So we would like to create 3 1-credit-hour evidence-based practice courses specifically dedicated to that project and giving those students the time that they need and a course dedicated to it. I know that's a lot, so I'm open for questions.
Playing very well. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, Madam Chair, it's gonna take a minute, but I'll bring it out. I move to approve the major curriculum change request from University of St. Mary Graduate Program to increase overall clinical hours to 780, remove the NU 640 statistics for healthcare 1-credit-hour course and make statistics 3 credit hours a prerequisite, remove NU 611 informatics as that content is embedded in other courses, change NUFP 771, their advanced health assessment and diagnostic reasoning course from 3 credit didactic and 2 credit of lab to NUFPP 773, advanced health assessment and diagnostic reasoning to 3 credit didactic, 1 credit lab, and 1 credit clinical. Number 5, change NUFP 780 primary care 1 to NUFP 781 primary care 1, NUFP 780, and NUFP 786 to NUFP 783, NUFP 786 to NUFP 785, and number 6, create 3 evidence-based practice project courses, NU 760, NU 761, NU 762 for 1 credit hour each.
Way to be specific.
Also,
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying yes.
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 Any opposed signify by saying no. Any abstentions? Motion carries. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Appreciate your time.
It's found from looking back that being a little more specific in the motions does help when we look back at curricular changes.
Well, we appreciate you and Michelle for helping to craft that verbiage for us.
We were very thoughtful. Try to keep it brief, but.
Kinsey, Kansas Community College.
Just as Susan's coming up, they originally submitted ADN and PN requests. The ADN were minor curriculum changes. So, kind of let her know that kind of after we did the agenda. So. Go ahead, Susan.
Well, good morning and thank you for having me. I'm Susan Anderson from Kansas City, Kansas Community College. I'm here today representing the practical nursing program. Sorry, the major curriculum change request we're asking is for a change in delivery method of our didactic portion of our program. Currently, we have what I would call kind of an old-fashioned outlook to practical nursing, which requires a student pretty much to give up their life. You pretty much have to come to school all day, every day, and that's just not reasonable these days. There's been a lot of student feedback, faculty feedback, advisory board feedback, and looked at this all semester, and we truly feel that we would be very effective if we were able to do our didactic portion of our learning online. And we would continue, of course, clinical will be face-to-face. We'll have, most of our classes have labs, so we'll be able to lay eyes on students, assess their clinical performance, but give them some flexibility in their didactic portion of class. We would, at this time, like to just do this in the spring so that we would have 1 semester for students who don't like this. But in the future, if students love this, we may just switch to this. So I guess our delivery method would be online or on ground for didactic. I was sending our teachers to training for online learning. We know that's a new way of teaching, and they're doing really well with that. And we have a lead teacher who's mentoring others as well. And so I'm just here to answer any questions you might have about that or.
Susan, how did they do with online during COVID?
We did great. We did great. It was rough. The clinical was the worst. You just can't simulate that. I mean, you do the best you can. But the faculty really scrambled and our strength, and I bet everybody says this, is our faculty that care so much. They don't mind going above and beyond. They're going to schedule some Zoom sessions, whether the students attend or not. Okay, but they're gonna be there for the students. So I think just that passion they have to make sure that we're connected.
Madam Chair, I move to approve the major curriculum change request from Kansas City Kansas Community College team program to offer didactic courses in a hybrid and or high flex format beginning spring 2024.
And a motion, is there a second? Second. Any discussion? All in favor, signify by saying yes.
Yes.
Any opposed, signify by saying no. Any abstentions? Motion carries. Thank you very much. Washburn University graduate.
Making their continued appearances. You guys have been busy. They've been so busy.
So, good morning. My name is Jane Carpenter, and I'm the Dean of the School of Nursing, and this is Dr. Bobby Mansfield, and she's the Associate Dean of the Graduate Program. And Bobby has led a very small group on a very big mission to revise our curriculum, and I think this is either our third or fourth time. I've lost track. We thought we were done, but they had one last change that they wanted to make, which is related to our health assessment class, or advanced health assessment, which is now in U 824. We're proposing to change that to 829. And I'll let Bobby kind of talk to you a little bit about the changes, but she's outlined for you kind of how it affects each cohort. We refer to them as monopoly sheets as you come in terms of the progression for each different track. And so we've tried to outline that for you. So
One thing about the Washburn program, DNP, or the psych mental health, where there's a first certification being attained, is that we have always required a great number of direct patient care hours. So we are not at all intimidated by changes to increase that to 750. Our standard has been 1,000 direct patient care. So we are adhering to that with this request, which is to remove clinical hours, if you can believe that, from our advanced health assessment course. And the rationale for that is sort of the emphasis that we need our students to have basic competencies in health assessment before we turn them loose in the clinical arena. We found that clinical placements are irregular in terms of how preceptors and students understand that role, that very foundational role. So we will retain our emphasis on simulation and competency assessment before we have them begin their clinicals and their specialty population foci. So we have 105 clinical hours that have been associated with advanced health assessment. We are proposing removing those and redistributing them in the psych mental health area, in particular, the family practice area. We have plenty of hours, so we'll lose a clinical hour in our total program. So with that comes some opportunities, as you can see, adjusting the course title, the course number, description, prerequisites. They're all very, very minor changes. The greater amount of work was just determining how will this look in terms of total program hours for 5 of the 7 monopoly sheets. So I'd be happy to answer any specific questions related to the change that we are requesting.
Is there a motion?
Madam Chair, I move to approve the major curriculum change request from Washburn University Graduate Program to change the course number, title, description, prerequisites, outcomes, and credit hours for the Advanced Health Assessment and Differential Diagnosis course for the DNP and PMHNP certificate programs, and decrease credit hours from 4 to 3 with removal of clinical hours from course. Clinical hours will be adjusted in the DNP programs that lead to the initial NP licensure.
Is there a second? Second. Any discussion? All in favor, signify by saying yes.
Yes.
Any opposed, signify by saying no. Any abstentions? Motion carries.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. ACP&E, EN for curriculum.
Good morning, I'm Christina Rudisell, and I'm here to represent the KCP core curriculum and anybody else that wants to join me. So we are asking that the core curriculum no longer be how the practical nursing standalone programs are aligned. What we are going to do instead is very similar to the ADN programs across the state. We're going to keep our program outcomes aligned, as well as 2 prerequisite classes, human growth and development and anatomy and physiology. The other part of it will also be that CNA is no longer a mandatory prerequisite for the schools. It will now be the school's decision on whether or not they mandate CNA as a prerequisite. So I'd be open to any questions. And just history, we have found that over the last, I think it's been 16 years now that this has been going on. It's incredibly difficult to keep it updated. And by the time we take the time to update it, it is again outdated because you have to get, all of us together in a room regularly to get that done. So that's why we've decided to move this forward.
Do you see any problem with transferability if we go away from the alignment?
There's a problem with transferability now. So I don't know that that's really going to change. Because even though the curriculum is the same, the way we teach it is completely different. And our clinical sites oftentimes do correspond with what our students are learning. And so there's already an issue with transferability. However, with that being said, I think all of us do our best to accept transfer students whenever we can.
You want to mention in your discussion with KBOR?
Yeah,
Just to help, I was gonna answer that. Okay,
Yeah.
Thank you.
yeah, so this started, gosh, I think it's been about 9 months ago now. With a conversation with Vera and April at KBOR, and Vera Brown and April Henry at KBOR. And essentially what they informed us of is that we can do what we choose with the core curriculum. However, they needed to hear it from all of us. So they came and spoke to us in March. And, we had a very long group discussion over what can and cannot be done. And KBOR said that they were there essentially to support us. And that they would support our decisions. They again had the question about, transferability, and that was the initial reason for this to occur. But it's not occurring anyway, it's already incredibly difficult. So with that knowledge, they went ahead and approved, provided that KSBN approves it, that they would approve it as well. But they didn't have any issues with us being aligned via our program outcomes, as it's shown relatively successful with the ADN programs already.
Makes sense.
We're looking forward to being able to update our programs regularly.
Madam Chair, I move to approve the major curriculum change request from Kansas Council of Practical Honors Educators with agreement from KBOR to eliminate the mandatory use of the KSPN core curriculum and allow PN programs to be aligned through the program outcomes and prerequisites.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? All in favor, signify by saying yes.
Yes.
Any opposed, signify by saying no. Any abstentions?
Do I need to abstain since I'm the president?
I don't think
Thanks,
so.
we'll run this. Motion carries.
Thank you. And may I ask if, that just for the purpose of minutes, that it be reminded to all directors that it is a major curriculum change if they do want to make any changes to the curriculum at this point. So just because I know we have a lot of new directors, so it'd be beneficial to know. So thank you for your time.
Good note.
Thank you.
University of Kansas DNA.
Hello, I'm Dr. Carrie Arns. I'm the Assistant Program Administrator for the North San Luis Education Department at the University of Kansas. Hi, I am Dr. Britta Kendall, faculty member with the KUNC Nursing Anesthesia Education Department. So our program is actually proposing that, unfortunately, our longtime favorite pharmacology instructor is retiring, Dr. Kazernick, who all the students love. And so our faculty has decided to absorb his course load. And it's how they had it set up before. He had 3 1-credit-hour units in the fall semester. And in the spring, they had an additional 3 1-credit-hour units in the spring. And so we're proposing to actually just make a 3-hour credit course in the fall and a 3-hour credit course in the spring that contains the exact same content. It'll be taught in the same format, just new instructors who have all taken that course in the past and have been mentored by him as well. Yeah, and Dr. Britta Kendall will be the lead faculty on that with two others helping.
Madam Chair, I move to approve the major curriculum change request from University of Kansas ENAP program to change the format for the 6 credit hours of required advanced pharmacology courses from 6 1-credit-hour courses, fall semester Pharm 761, 762, 763, and spring semester Pharm 764, 765, 766, all taught by contracted faculty from the School of Medicine to 2 3-credit-hour courses, NURA 761, Nurse Anesthesia Pharmacology 1 in the fall, and NURA 764, Nurse Anesthesia Pharm 2 in the spring, taught by Nurse Anesthesia Education Department faculty beginning fall 2023.
Nice.
She's had a lot of practice at that.
Good for picking up papers.
Patty, we have a motion.
I'll second.
Thanks, Amy. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying yes.
Yes.
Any opposed signify by saying no. Any abstentions? Motion carries.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for coming.
Holy Community College, ADN program.
Michelle Bliss, Director of Nursing at Holy Community College.
Kathy McVeigh, ADN instructor, Holy Community College.
So we have gone through our curriculum and things like that. Our curriculum used to be our didactic and clinical were in the same course. So we went through and with our assessment coordinator, and along with our Canvas, LMHS, or not LMHS, our delivery methods of Canvas. There was always 2 courses, but they only got 1 grade. So when they graduated and tried to transfer onto a BSN program, it didn't show that they had any clinical hours. So what we want to do is split those clinical hours out. So with doing that, we ran out of hours. With the KBOR regulations, we can only have the 72 hours. So what we did was we actually took public speaking out. It was a 3-credit hour. So we took that out because we felt like we give them enough speech and interpersonal communication, all of those things throughout the program. So we used those 3-credit hours. And we also used the rest of what we had left, the 2-credit hours, split out our didactic and our lecture courses so that we have enough time for our ADM instructors to actually get the information to our students. And so with separating those out, we also needed to get another hour in for them. So we actually developed a pharmacology 1-credit hour because we really feel like our students are kind of weak in pharmacology. And so that's where we come up with that 1-credit hour
to kind of help with that, get that information to them, and still stay within those 72 hours. And the other thing we did was just change the title of our last program, course, which is NS 245. We just want to add capstone to that, so that we can, get those, in a program student learning outcomes covered in that, course as well. Covered it.
Madam Chair, I move to approve the major curriculum change request from Colby Community College ADN program to one, remove the general education oral communication 3 credit hour requirement from the prerequisites for the nursing program and add a 1 3 credit hour pharmacology course to prerequisite hours. Number would depend. So add a 1 to 3 credit hour pharmacology course to prerequisite hours. Number would depend on factors that would be determined prior to admission. And 2, split combined didactic clinical nursing courses into separate courses with different course numbers and revise the ABN nursing course credit hours from 16 to 20.
You have a motion? Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying yes.
Yes.
Any opposed signify by saying no. Any abstentions? Motion carries. Fort Lee School University, ESN 2 program inspector.
Hello, thank you for saying us again. So, our undergraduate faculty have met pretty much every week this past year, trying to look at some opportunities to meet the needs of Western Kansas. We get calls all the time from sites. I like to say that COVID was hard on everyone, but I think it was most hard on rural Kansas. And Renee and I had the opportunity to go out to Garden City for the Kansas Medical Association and meet with 21 different hospitals. And one of the things we constantly heard was, we need nurses, we need nurses, we need nurses. We get calls, we get emails, we're giving $3,000, we're giving $7,000, we're giving $10,000, but it all comes down to the fact if we don't have more nurses, it doesn't matter. So we started looking at different ways that we can try to meet that need. Prior to COVID, we had a wait list that was substantial. At that point in time, we weren't really looking to expand. Now we're looking at what can we do to meet that need. We've looked at a variety of options, virtual, hybrid, and then it's funny how after you've you've tried to fit everything into a nice box, the answer is right in front of your face. So one of the reasons we've been limited to 30 students each semester, sometimes we'll go up to 35 currently licensed, but 65 students is our classroom size. Our largest classroom in St. Paul is 37. But we do have a suite of classrooms that is three classrooms, and sitting and meeting, we thought, if we can't have a new building, which is what we would love the most, is there a way to do a remodel and take 2 classrooms and turn them into classrooms that would seat 45 to 50? So we met with construction and the dean, and we're told, yes, we could do that. It'll probably take a couple years. It would cost displacing faculty and students, but potentially down the road, it would allow us to have that need met. So we met back with the faculty, and you have good faculty when you say, well, this is something we could do. Do you all mind leaving the building? It could be 2 or 3 years, and every single one of them said, no, we need to meet this need in Western Kansas. Since COVID, probably like everyone, our wait list dipped during COVID, and now we are probably at 25 to 30% over where our pre-COVID numbers were. I'd be embarrassed to tell you the GPAs that we're turning down because it's going to deter students from coming to Fort Hays if we would continue to turn those students down. So because of the fact that we played with that 35 number on a variety of semesters, we've already gone up to that 4th cohort several different times. So we have the clinical sites. If we would go up to 90, it would only be in a case where if we had students that were repeating and we just needed that. And most of the time when you have that, you have a case where they're not needing all the clinical sites. If we didn't need a 5th section, we don't feel like that would be a problem. We like to have, after we've had that buffer of 5, we like to have a little bit of extra just because you don't ever know when you're gonna have 2 students on the rubric that are exactly the same, and it just gives us a little bit of flexibility. Our pass rates have been outstanding. I like to tell groups that I meet with, we have put 95 students out in practice in the last 2 years, and those 95 students came from a 95% pass rate. So we had a very good pass rate with our numbers. So we're requesting to go up to 90.
And what about the sim level, let's support? I know you're busy because you also have other entities come in there too, right, in the community.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, currently, we probably only maximize probably about 60% of our sim lab space at any one time. And we do have dedicated simulation personnel that help coordinate those efforts. We have master calendars, faculty meet. We have a meeting in the hallway in front of the whiteboard, and they're very flexible with each other. So we don't have any concerns about the sim lab space.
I had concerns. I was concerned that I could hear the meeting all the way to my office. And I was like, do I get there? Tanya assured me I didn't. And amazingly enough, it went very well. And we're doing unique things such as our skills lab. We're bringing them, we're actually going to do 2 groups of 10, start them out and do some didactic with 2 instructors to where they get that initial and then split up into 2 different skills lab rooms to where and then doing them back to back to where we will get 40 students through skills lab all on one day, which will help reduce the footprint that we're leaving in the building for that. So I can definitely tell we've met all year because we've been able to figure it out. And it is interesting that the easiest solution, which may not be the easiest solution in the fact that it causes us to leave our building for a while, but it definitely allows us to keep the integrity of the program, is just expanding and then figuring out what to do with contract space. So.
And when did you want this to start? In the fall?
We'd like to start it in the fall.
Madam Chair, I move to approve the major curriculum change request from Fort Hays State University BSN pre-licensure program to increase yearly admission seats from 65 to 90 students.
A second.
Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying yes.
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 Any opposed signify by saying no. Any abstentions? Motion carries. Thank you for addressing the nursing shortage. That's a major focus of our legislators across the street. So we appreciate your attention to that. It's very important. Okay, Newman University BSN program.
And Colton, Newman is on Zoom. Teresa Vetter, I believe, is who you need to move over if we could, please. And just to let you all know too, in your packet, you would have seen several actual major curriculum change requests. Because it's a curriculum change, they're doing a pretty much an overall curriculum change. So kind of did it like we did Benedictine the last time. After she presents all the changes, hopefully we can get this into 2 motions. But we'll let Teresa do the presentation of what the changes are they're looking for approval for her this time.
Good morning, Teresa.
Good morning. Colton, Jerry Tyrell is also with me.
Thank you, Teresa. I forgot to look for her. There she is. G, yeah.
Oh,
Definitely took me a minute.
Me too. I didn't see it first time.
I thought about sending you a chat a little bit ago, and maybe I should have done that.
That's all right.
So we'll figure it out one way or another.
There she is.
Hi, Dr. Tyrell. Good to see you.
Good morning. Good to see you as well.
So I'm Teresa Vetter. I'm the director of the Division of Nursing for Newman University.
And I'm Jerry Tyrell. I'm the Dean of the School of Healthcare Professions.
So our program for the Bachelor of Science in Nursing, we've been looking at multiple things and looking at that, incorporating the new essentials from the AACN. Also looking at, just changes within nursing practice, things that went on during COVID, and then looking at some decline in our in-class pass rate, predominantly over the pandemic period, but also just in general, we felt like we were seeing some decline. And so felt like it was time to really look at the entire program and make some adjustments. So this is for an overall curriculum plan that would look at making adjustments across the program. Some classes would stay relatively the same, but changes in most everything. I am going to look at an overall change, the change in our program outcomes, and then also only present for the junior year changes at this point, instead of it being such a lengthy change, adding in 2 full years. We thought we'd break that up and get the first year done, and then we'll present that second year at another meeting. So the faculty of the whole, looking at both through curriculum and assessment committees, have worked together to develop these changes using, again, like I said, information from our NCLEX pass rates, also from we use Kaplan nursing test to look at those outcomes. And then the inclusion of the essentials into the overall change will result in addition of 2 credit hours to the nursing curriculum. This will come in the junior year. We are looking at a separation of what is currently a 5 credit hour nursing 3015 foundations of nursing care, which includes like basic adult nursing care, theory, and professional nursing practice. We would like to take this to 2 separate courses. Nursing 3073, which would still be titled Foundations of Nursing Care, which will focus more on just the basics of adult nursing care, and then a second course of Nursing 3083, Introduction to Professional Nursing, which would have a stronger focus in theoretical and professional concepts in nursing. This would be one of the credit hour additions that we would see, because we would be that would be 6 credit hours instead of the previous 5 credit hours. We would also like to have an addition of a 2 credit hour pharmacology course in the first semester. Previously, we had a 3 credit hour pharmacology class only in the second semester. We did feel like pharmacology is a constantly growing area of content. And also, even if it wasn't changing, it's just huge. And we also looked at the idea that some of the primary errors that are seen in nursing practice are related to medication errors. And so a strong understanding of pharmacology was absolutely necessary to lay down an understanding of why that safety is so important. So we'd like that Nursing 3092, Fundamentals of Pharmacology, to be added to introduce that beginning nursing student to pharmacological principles and safe medication administration. Since these students are practicing within healthcare settings during that first semester, we felt like that basic knowledge would just help support them in understanding safe medication practice. Also looking at, we previously had a separate 1 credit hour nursing 3011 basic nursing interventions, and then a 3 credit hour clinical course, nursing's 3053 foundations of clinical practice. And we wanted to combine those into a single nursing 3053 foundations of clinical practice that would be a division of, they do their first 8 weeks of that clinical course would be done on campus in the lab with a focus on learning basic interventions and basic principles of clinical practice. In week number 9, they would then transition into the clinical setting and have completed all of their skills and be ready to enter that practice in clinical to be able to use the things that they have learned in the lab setting. Currently, students would be in the lab, continue to be learning in the lab after they had entered into the clinical setting in week number 6. And so it set up a situation where it was more difficult for students to understand what they were allowed to do in clinical, and confusing for the practicing nurses as to, you know, can this student do this? Can this student do that? And we still will have students, you know, they carry a card that tells I have completed this in school and able to practice this in the clinical setting, but they won't be having a constantly changing interventions that they have recently learned that they are trying to add to that over time. And we think that will just reduce students feeling uncomfortable because they're having to tell nurses, no, I can't do that. And nurses saying, yes, you can. This is basic, this is basic nursing. And so we just want to help support students in not crossing over a line where there's some concerns about their readiness in that practice setting. In the second semester, changes that we would like to see in that second semester of the junior year, we have previously been dividing research into 2 1-hour courses, 1 hour in the second semester and 1 hour in the third semester. And we would like to combine those into a single course. Previously were nursing 3141, research and evidence-based practice 1, and nursing 4061, research and evidence-based practice 2. And we'd like to combine that down into a single 3 credit hour evidence-based practice 2 course that would be offered in the second semester. We believe that it is important for students to early on begin to have some understanding of evidence-based practice and how we go about establishing what is the evidence in nursing, and then really making sure students have that firm understanding of how to review the literature, how to look at the research that has been done, whether that's quantitative or qualitative, and be able to understand what are we talking about when we talk about evidence-based practice. And so this would allow them to get that in that second half of the first year and be able to carry that into the second year in that senior year and really implement that use of literature and evidence into their planning and implementation of care for the patients they see. In nursing 3143 would be is the nursing pharmacological interventions course that we would like to implement to provide a continuation of the pharmacology content that they would have introduced in the first semester of the nursing program, and carry that over to continue to increase their knowledge and understanding of safe nursing practice, getting more, some of the medication administration specifically related to nursing practice, and continuing look at the classifications of medications and understanding of how those are need to be looked at from the perspective of nursing practice. The large percentage of our students do enter into adult nursing care. And because we recognize that as being, that medical surgical practice and focus on that adult nursing care, we took a really, really careful look at medical surgical adult care. And previously, we have had a single, in the second semester of the junior year, we had a single nursing 3188 adult nursing care 1, which was an 8 credit hour medical surgical course. And this was pretty overwhelming for students, an 8 credit hour course that they spent, like 5.5 hours a week in their doing that medical surgical, and felt that was a little overwhelming. We also had students who had come back to us that although they had the opportunity to do better, but those students who maybe got a C in an 8 credit hour course, this really could impact their overall grade point average and ability to be accepted into a graduate program. And since part of our goal is to help support students in that ability to continue on with their education, we wanted to also look at that. And so we took the divided that adult care into a second course, and so took the course in the second semester of the junior year down to a 5 credit hour course of nursing 3185, and it would be then have a second adult care 2 would then be added into the third semester, where previously we only had specialty courses. We would now take it to have a adult medical surgical course also in that third semester of the program in the senior year. These students would continue to have both a clinical experience on the day shift and a clinical experience on the evening shift, to give them the opportunity in that second semester to have some awareness of the changes that we see in our nursing care focus, depending on the time of day that we're practicing. And so we are shifting a little bit of the skills interventions that previously had been taught in that first semester, predominantly things like IV therapy and things like more advanced, like, central line dressing changes, and looking at not necessarily like wound care overall, but like wound packing and things that really focused around needing to maintain asepsis and a little bit more advanced practice
Those skills will also shift into the second semester. So they will have, with that 5 credit hour class, have some increased time in looking at lab time to work towards those skills. So just kind of a quick synopsis of what the second year would be. I'm not going to go into a lot of the specifics, but it will add the 3 or 4 credit hour adult nursing care 2 to the 3rd semester, continuing on that exposure to adult medical surgical. We are planning on taking our community nursing. We're going to remove the clinical component from community nursing, and community nursing clinicals will now be put with the courses that they associate with. So instead of doing community clinical specifically with the community course, they would do adult med surg clinicals like clinics with one of the med surg courses. They would do pediatric clinics, school nursing with the pediatric course. So that would take that from a 4 credit hour to a 3 credit hour. Currently, we had adult nursing care 2 was in 4th semester. It will now become adult nursing care 3. And then our senior seminar in the 4th semester will become a transitions to professional practice, which will take kind of a application approach to current issues that we see in nursing accountability and professionalism, and also focus on aspects of that last semester of the nursing program that senior students need to focus on to transition to professional practice, how to apply for a license, how to prepare for NCLEX, those types of things. And then just a brief change in what is now our preceptored capstone. We have limited that previously to only medical surgical experiences, and we're actually going to look at changing that to a capstone clinical experience, where we will open that up to also allow students to do their capstones in specialty areas, which we have not done before. We haven't allowed mental health, labor and delivery, any of those areas. So that kind of gives you a synopsis of all those changes. Our outcome changes really focus on making sure that they include the pieces of the essentials and beginning to change the language to fit with that, the competency-based. And then I kind of went through the changes for those classes, the courses already in that first year in the junior year. So any questions?
I've done a lot of work.
And
Sorry for being so long.
just to clarify, so you're requesting the approval for the junior level changes this time and your
Yes.
program outcomes.
Yes.
Correct. I think that's the way the motion is written, with all those curriculum changes, in one motion. If you choose to do it that way.
It is actually in the 2. We have 2 different motions.
One should be for program outcomes and then one for yes, that was deliberate, so.
Go ahead. Okay, so I move to approve the major curriculum change request from Newman University BSN program to number 1, revise the overall curriculum plan with an increase from 58 to 60 credit hours for the program and changes to the junior level to begin fall 2023 Number 2, revise the BSN program outcomes to reflect the changes in the curriculum.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Any opposed signify by saying no. Motion carries.
Let me take a rest.
You can do that.
Go ahead and read every part of this report.
Technically, yes.
Okay. I will-
To make it a motion.
I move to approve the major curriculum change request from Newman University BSN program to revise the junior level curriculum by adjusting NSG 3002 LPN bridge course to coincide with the curriculum changes. Number 2, eliminate NSG 3015 foundation 5 credit hours and add NSG 3073 foundations of nursing care and NSG 3083 intro to professional nursing. Number 3, add NSG 3092 fundamentals of pharmacology. Number 4, combine NSG 3011 and NSG 3053 into one course, NSG 3093 foundations of clinical practice. Number 5, eliminate NSG 3141 and NSG 4061 and add a new course, NSG 3123. Number 6, eliminate NSG 3161 pharmacotherapeutics and add a new course, NSG 3141. And number 7, change NSG 3188 adult nursing care to NSG 3185.
Okay, we have a motion. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying yes.
Yes.
Any opposed signify by saying no. Any abstentions? Motion carries. Thank you, Teresa and Jerry. Appreciate you being here.
Thank you.
We are going to take a short break, I think, and then how about we take 10 minutes, we'll come back at 10:20 and reconvene the rest of our agenda. So.
In fact,
Hi, Colton, it's 10:20, so if you want to start doing your magic,
Will do. 1 second. All right.
Thank you. Okay, we've gone with scholarships and how do you find us momentarily? Okay. Okay, let's talk about where we convene our meeting in 21. Nursing scholarship timeline revision.
okay. So in the past, we've always come to you with the nursing undergraduate scholarship application, or request to look at that in September. Arthur Davis, who's always been the one to provide the funds for those scholarships, Carol did great. They had asked us if there was any way we could get them named sooner. They've changed hands in terms of who's responsible for getting the money and how that's handled. So they need to know a little sooner so that we can, and I made an error in here. I said, we want to move up the date when the essays are due so that we can get all that done. We still plan to present them at the March meeting. I made a change in here to December and that was not correct. So just know that the revision has to do with when the essays are due. We still plan to present them at the March meetings. So that part of the revision, I just wanted to make sure I told you. So that was the reason for the change. So what I am proposing is that we used to have a November 30 deadline. So that we want to move that up. So we would now be able to decide in June, if we're going to have the scholarship, we check with our company. If they're going to do it, then we would be able to, at the June meeting, decide on topic, make sure those changes are correct. And then we could put that out there so that when students are starting school, they would have that information as they're starting school. Some as early as July or August. But they would be due by mid-October rather than that November 30. That gives me time then to request help. I probably will do that at the September meeting just to request help. And then once I know we have everything in, we would send those out and we would have that deadline be the end of the year for review of all the applications and the essays. And then we would be able to turn that into the company by the end of the year. So they have plenty of time we have time to get the information from the student, get them the information and get all of that. So that's what the request is to move that timeline a little bit for you all. And with that being said, then we would need to look at that this year to see if you want to make any changes to the essay topic for this year. If these changes are okay with you in terms of timing, then the only other question is, do you want to leave the topic? I will remind you that we did just change it last year. So we had our first year with this topic, but I know there are also lots of things happening in nursing. So if you have a request for a change or something else you think would be good for nursing students to be thinking about, that would be up for grabs as well.
How many applications did we get last year?
I think we only had 25 this past year. I'm hoping that sometimes I think it's we get it done and we got it out there pretty soon, but I get a lot of them right at the very end. So I'm hoping if we can get it out there sooner, I can have it to program directors at the beginning and maybe they can make that announcement sooner rather than later. And that we can get it out on our website too, so that it's there. But the year before, the last couple of years, we've been under 30 total. But the year before that, we had 100. I think the year before we had such a low number and program directors were encouraged. And I think we had whole classes of students who submitted. But, for those who were applying, I was telling them, you never know. It might be 100, but if it's 20, your chances are pretty good if there's 4. So encourage them to do, it's $1,000 scholarship. So it's not just
Well, how do you see that timeline impacting
It's truly just if they make time to do it, it's really what it is. And if you get them in a class and say, okay, this is what we're gonna do, the first part of the class, at least get it started. They may do it, but I was just wondering about the topic. Is it the topic that's maybe diverting them or, but since this was the first year,
Yeah.
I don't think we should change it after 1 year.
How has the nursing shortage impacted models of nursing care?
Right. I mean, we're still living.
Does that seem intimidating?
Yeah, we're still living that a lot. Yeah.
With this topic, they stayed on the topic versus in the past.
Yeah, that's the year before that, they
They
had
got really off track.
Yeah, so I think the topic should stay, especially for 1 year to see, but I didn't know if that contributed to the low number.
Well, I think there's so much to write about with LMHTs and an increased number of PM programs.
Yeah, because the other thing about that, November 30th gets really close to the midterms or finals and things for people, and I think they forget. So we do get some of those last minute, but what happens is they get part of it in, but they don't get all of it in. So we can, unless we get all 3 parts of that application, because they have to have something from their school, and then their essay, and then their information. If that's not complete, we won't review it. They have to have everything in. So I don't know if that's part of it, but I was hoping by moving up to, maybe we get away from, it might be in the middle of midterms, I don't know, but.
But at least if it's away from the end, especially people that are getting ready to
Well,
graduate.
The
That'll-
other thing would be, I mean, we could, if it's easier to think about as the end of the month, we could do the end of October. But that would just push those who do review, and depending on the number. And the reason we ask for volunteers to do that and you review them all is because we're reviewing them all together and you're grading them on the same scale. To have different people doing one group and versus you need to be looking at all of them. If that makes sense, but it is a lot of commitment if there are more to do that.
I think moving it up would help, at least, because the end of the semester is busy for everybody.
Would it give you, if we did the end of October, would 2 months be enough time for reviewers to complete that?
Oh, yes, I think so.
Yeah, I mean, so my only question there was, is October 15th to arbitrary in the middle, would the end of the month be an easier memory point? Or just to do it?
They just set the date.
Yeah. Because the 15th then gives time to get everything and gives Michelle and I time to get all the stuff done and get it to you, because it still takes a little time, and then you would still have 2 months as a group to review.
So you can just accept that as direction from the committee. Motion.
I don't think so.
There is a motion.
Oh, is it?
I wasn't sure. I think so. It's just whether the
We can make
timeline.
I move to revise the timeline for the nursing scholarship application deadline from November 30th to October 15th each year, and to move decision for topic of essay from September to the June meeting. Changes are to ensure scholarship funds are available by the March board meeting for recipients.
We have a motion, is there a second? Second. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed signify by saying no. Motion carries.
Thank you very much for that.
Okay, LMHT draft regulations.
Madam Chair, this is gonna be me talking about this. Starting on page 243 in your packet, just to kind of back up years with you, just to kind of let you know. Pre-COVID, there was a group that looked at the undergrad regulations, the graduate regulations, and the LMHT regulations, because they wanted to update them, which is great. And then we decided that was too much to take at one time through the approval process, so the decision was made just to go with the undergrad. And we did, and those got approved, and so those have been updated. I was requested to, the LMHT has always been a little bit different in how their regs look and all of that. They had one reg that kind of talked about their whole education program plus other things. And it's kind of confusing. And it's kind of confusing for the site visitors too, when they go out there, because it doesn't match the other ones. So, the committee requested that I take the LMHT and make regulations that would somewhat match the nursing. Okay, and that sounded great at that point. And I think it was still a really good idea. However, you're gonna hear in the board meeting tomorrow that we have 2 years to look at 90 regs. And we have to go through every reg, and there's several things that have to be answered on every reg and stuff like that. What that's leading to is there is a push to cut down on the number of regulations. So I don't think it's probably a good idea to go from 3 to 11. I don't think that's gonna be looked at nicely. I will tell you that. You know, these haven't been updated since the 1970s, so they definitely need some work. What I was going to offer to do, and Janelle and I had kind of talked about this, is Janelle and I do some work and see if we can still keep it down to like 3 or 4 regs, but you put several things in one reg. And I still think it probably would go through the approval process okay, because we should have authority to do all of this. But anyway, we could work on that if you want us to and bring it back, or, you know, it's up to you. We can go with what we have here.
So it would be similar to the content that you have proposed here, it would just be the number of words.
Right. There wouldn't be a separate one for faculty. There wouldn't be a separate one for clinical. There wouldn't be a separate one for student policy.
We probably do one for the program.
Yeah, one for the program and stuff, because I'm telling, I kind of see the handwriting on the wall that we're gonna have to cut down on the number of regs, period. So if we were to see that this kind of worked a little bit for LMHT, then maybe it could spill over, depending on how you feel about it, with the undergrad and the grad education, because that will cut you down, because there's probably 10 or 11 for each of those. And we do have 90 altogether regs that will have to be gone through in 2 years. So I was just gonna throw that out there, or we can do what's here. The other thing, I just wanted to update you a little bit on LMHT. Because, you know, we had this task force that looked at what could be, actions that could be taken to maybe help the healthcare workforce shortage. And I was doing it with KBOR, and the Hospital Association was in on it, and several people were part of this task force. Okay, our report is going to be presented to the Kansas Board of Regents Thursday morning, and I will be over there because I would bet there's some questions about the nursing part of it. But one of those things was my strong belief that the LMHTs, when they go through education, they should get college credit for some of that. They really do, because you're not going to be able to create a pathway very well if they have to start over if they want to become an LPN. That really, when it's pretty much the same content, some of it. So I went out, Janelle and I went out yesterday and talked to the program administrators for the PN and the ADN. So I just wanted to kind of get their feeling before I sit down. Well, we'll see what KBOR says, but I would think they'll probably be, yeah, go ahead with this. I think we need to know how many like community colleges or stuff like that would be on board with wanting to maybe help with an LMHT program. Because just having 2 in the state is not going to increase the numbers very fast. And there was some interest out there. And there were a lot of things thrown out, but one thing that was also talked about, right now, our requirements is 450 hours of didactic and 450 hours of clinical. However, some of that is more than they get in an LPN program. So maybe we need to
Credit hour.
look at some of these things and try to make them fit in a little bit better, but I wanted to understand maybe what program administrators would be interested in working on this with us. So that's kind of where we're at now. I mean, I think the next step will be the K board meeting Thursday morning to see what they have to say about this. And then I'm willing to meet with like a representative from K board and start, working in on this, but the regs would probably have to be redone again anyway, so. I don't know. That was just feedback for you all and questions about the regs, what you want done with those.
Well, it makes sense to me to wait and have you try to combine them into the 3 regs, like what we talked about. I do think that Thursday's meeting will probably give us some direction. There is very much a need for additional LMHTs throughout the state and the 2 programs that we do have are, I think, from a location perspective, there could be some additional spread into some of our higher metropolitan areas, higher volume metropolitan areas. So
Unfortunately,
Go ahead.
unfortunately, I think the bad thing for the LMHTs is they can't really transfer their license anywhere else. There's only 2 other states that actively are teaching LMHTs, and that's Colorado and California. Theirs doesn't look like ours, really. Everybody takes their own licensure exam. Arkansas also has them, but it's my understanding they are not doing any more education. They're just kind of, as they retire and let their license go inactive, then there's less. But we did lose over half of our LMHTs that did not renew their license the end of December, because they renew every 2 years, but it's not in their birthday year like it is for nursing. It's the end of December every even year. And we did lose over half of them, and they were not all at retirement age. Some of them had actually just had their license for 5 years or less. So I think there probably needs to be some changes.
Yeah, I think we should do this, really, like you said, I looked at the changes done today and they look. Since Janelle and I did the one in Hazen, we go off the 1905.
Yeah.
And I'm saying that'll work, I like that.
So are you thinking after you talk to them that it could possibly be another task force to work on getting this organized?
Yeah, I thought if K-Bor said, yeah, let's go for it, because Scott, my person that I've been working with K-Bor, who's on that task force and everything, him and I have talked about, kind of how we would go forward with this, but they really have to get K-Bor's approval for that stuff in that report, because there's several things in there. And then I would suggest to him also, and I think he would probably be open, is bringing in, some of the program administrators who have an interest in this, so that we can do this right in the first place.
So we'll table it for today, bring it back next time, maybe with some.
Changes to make them into.
Content looked good from my review and kind of what Becky said as well, just.
Yeah, I think the layout, even just of the regulation itself, like I said, the fact that there are probably 4 you could put into one, but still make it a lot more understandable and easier to find what it is you need within the regulation, so.
Yeah, it's stretched out over many things.
Yeah.
And a lot of that's just because you Xing out whole regs and putting in new, so.
Okay, discussion for F2R process for higher exception.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. So the reason this is on here is we had a request from a program administrator. Just to remind you, we have a process for faculty. Program administrators are required to submit a faculty qualification report for any faculty that comes on board. So whether it's full-time, part-time, or adjunct, they submit that. our FQR has specific requirements for faculty for both professional level and for PN level programs. So when they don't meet those requirements, they either have to, so if they don't have the level of degree they're supposed to have, the requirement has always been they either need to come with a degree plan, or we have a process for higher exception as well. In the higher exception process, it's not in the regulation, just says that if they have the ability to request a higher exception, that it needs to include the 4 things we always ask, you know, for the rationale for the higher exception, what they're doing to try to find the appropriate level, and what the qualifications of their higher exception person is that makes them qualify for the position. So that is in the regulation. What has been part of policy that was set is that the higher exception is good for 1 year. And that anytime they have a faculty, whether it's full-time, part-time, or adjunct, that each year that higher exception has to be reapproved or sent in and reapproved, because part of that regulation says, what are they doing to find appropriate faculty? So the implication there is that something is being done. And if I'm requesting a new higher exception, then, you know, part of that is, well, we've done this, this, and this, and we still aren't finding. So, and the idea has been so that they're showing effort in that part of the regulation, and that we're showing due diligence in our part of looking at that. But a lot of folks use higher exceptions, and the request was it becomes. The feeling was that it becomes, it's more work to do it that way. You have to remember to do it. You have to, okay, who do I have on a higher exception? But annual reports, higher exceptions are done every year. So I guess the question before the board is, the reason I was asked to bring it is, unless there is a change with the faculty, like they get on a degree plan instead of a higher exception, or they're no longer with the school, that nothing else would have to be done with the higher exception. They could just request it once, whether they were there 1 year or 10 years. So that's kind of what's out for you, because that's been part of like I said, policy, not regulation. The regulation is clear on that there has to be one if they don't meet, and that they have to answer the 4 questions. And we keep those on file. And I track those, and every year with the annual report, we ask for the number on degree plans, the number on higher exceptions. And I look at those compared to, you know, what we have, and to remove, a lot of people don't remove their adjunct faculty, which has been the other thing too. So I have extensive lists that need to be gone through to make sure we're keeping track of that, but that's another story for another day. So I guess the question then is, how do you feel about that policy? Is there any, within the regulation, is there any reason we need to change that? Or if you have other thoughts about that requirement? Did move it to online. Felt like that has eased the process somewhat. I don't have papers.
I feel like we should leave it this way. I mean, it is cumbersome to do it every year, but if we don't, we're gonna lose track of it. And then it's a finding on an audit, number one, but we also don't really have an idea of who's out there and who should be out there.
Well, I think the idea is to progress towards that, whether that's with that individual or whether that's with a different faculty, but the idea is to progress to that level. Right. Okay. And I think by losing that repetitive request, there's no track.
Yeah, because with the nursing faculty shortage right now, we're also faced with, sometimes this is a good plug-in. But there's not ever going to be an advancement, so that's why I feel like we need to keep it, because we need to know that too.
For those of you who have to work with and I can also just ask the city administrators overall too, if there's anything in the submission process that would make it easier to do that higher exception. Right now, it's required with the higher exception or degree plan that it comes in with an updated FQR. And I don't know whether it would, because we're always looking to make sure they're checking, current licensure. But if it gets cumbersome to redo all the other information, I guess the question is there an update form I should create that would make it a little easier to do that so that it's not all of it, if I can find a way to do that, if that doesn't, compromise.
Right, or just a box we can check on the QR form that says this is an update only and it only pertains to that. Other than filling out everything else.
Because the higher exception piece would still be required, because that's what the regulation requires.
I think we could get, it's still easier than it was with the paper, no matter what, but if we could just hit like one button and it automatically just takes us down to what we do need to do. That would probably be good, and you wouldn't have to create a new form, it's just an additional box in there. I say that because Adrian's out of the room and you can't correct me.
Well, and that could be just part of the explanation process, because you have to mark whether it's an update or an initial. And if update is marked, then just have to maybe do that initial to make sure verification has been done. And there's no change. Just to mark that there's no change in the other. Because I can certainly look at that to see if I could streamline the instruction. Okay, so what I'm hearing is no reason for change at this point. I will look at maybe simplifying the process, but per intent of the regulation, we're going to keep it as is, as our yearly requirement.
It's good. Yeah.
I would, as opposed to just checking a box, it'd be nice to say what steps have been taken to try to, whether, okay, it's this individual is currently.
If it's a
been
repeat.
progressing,
It's a repeat.
but, so it's not just we're staying where we are year by year, but that it may be a 3-year process to.
I was gonna say, does that change the decision process though, if they haven't made any steps to move forward?
Well, again, that's probably up to you all, or, the board making some kind of, it's a policy. If it meets the regulation, again, it's just a requirement that if you have someone that does not meet credentials, that you must have a higher exception on file.
Right.
And so that comes into play with accreditation, with regulation review to make sure you're in compliance with that. And the idea is that you're always looking at your,
And to me, that alone may not be concerned, but if pass rates are down and we're not seeing curriculum changes come forth, and then we haven't made progress, and to me, it's a component of the bigger picture to be considered in that discussion. If that's the only issue that's present, then, I don't know that would be as big of a concern, but to me, yeah,
Right.
it warrants the question, are we making progress?
well, and I guess a question I would have for you based on that is, I try to, in my report, I give you an idea what our FQRs are, how many are initial, how many are updates, how many are higher exceptions, degree plans, degree completions. Whether I need to do something more intentional with the higher exception piece to tell you, are these new higher exceptions, or are these, how many are in the 2 to 5 year, and how many are, repeat 5 or, past 5 years. And sometimes that you get a really good clinical person who just doesn't want to do the degree plan, but I guess the question is, at that point, that's where the program administrator has hopefully, that's where the discernment is. If I've got a really good person, they just are struggling to get them into that next level of program. There are some states that do, it's for clinical adjuncting, you can be just the level above what you're teaching. But that's in their regulation. Ours does not say that. For professionals, so that's ADN and BSN, they've got to be at least one level above.
So I do think it probably would be helpful when you give it,
report those out if it's
Do a
a
little
new hire versus
Okay.
how many years.
Because I
Within
mean, we can
5
certainly
years.
look at that and see, to see if there's any need for other kinds of change. I'd be glad to do that.
I think it's just a data point.
Okay.
Right, considered in the bigger picture.
Okay, faculty with unlicensed practice.
Okay, this is a new topic for me since I've been here, but the reason this is on here is that in the past year, we have now had multiple occurrences, not just one, where we have discovered not just unlicensed practice, but it's a faculty person. So not only have they, and it's not 1 or 2 days, it's semester or 2 or 3 months of unlicensed practice. So in these cases, the unlicensed practice, there is a fine to the nurse for that. The question is going to come up, what does that mean for a faculty member who by regulation is supposed to be a licensed person? It's just concerning. We have in our regulation, the process and why a lot of times you'll see, and then you probably get tired of seeing it, make sure there's a process to make sure all KSBN required information is in faculty files. But we only go and look at that once every 5 to 8 to 10 years. But the reason it's important is part of that is a licensure verification. So we know that the nurse is responsible for her license, for their license. So there is an individual accountability, but a faculty person is also an employee of a program or a school. And it begs the question of whether there's some kind of liability for the school if they've got an unlicensed nurse who is in clinical with students. I mean, granted, their knowledge isn't going to change because they're unlicensed, so they're teaching the students, but what about the liability of overseeing students in a facility? Contracts say the facilities are ultimately responsible for patient care. But if I were a facility and my nurses need to be licensed to take care, there's liability for them if their nurses get unlicensed practice and they have to go back and review. We were talking a little bit about the
Billing components to it. I mean, if the care provided is tied to a billing component, you have to have an RN providing that care to feel appropriate. I mean, there could be funds that have to be.
So I don't know what the idea is, and part of it is Carol and I talked about this quite a bit.
We were kind of also wondering, since this has happened more than once, is there something that should be reported back to you all about that nursing program? Because obviously they're not following the regulations that that they need to be licensed. And I'm a firm believer in e-notify, and everybody's heard me, I beat this to the end. But if they were to enter into e-notify all of their faculty, they will know when there's been any action or any inaction on that license. That is the easiest way. It'll come to them. They don't have to go out and look at verification database or anything like that. So I think there is a simple way here that could make this not happen. However, I mean, I think Janelle and I were talking, okay, if it happens today and we don't do a site visit for 7 years, okay, it's not really going to show up there, but it is kind of a big thing. So is there something that you want reported back to you when it happens, or are we just saying?
Is it not grounds to go do an immediate audit on the program when that's found out?
It probably could, because they're not meeting our regulations.
There is something.
Janelle's got free time.
Yeah, free time.
Oh, Lord.
But even if she went out there and found that, the question is, would the program get put on conditional approval? What,
I'm not following regs.
Well, our site visit, we did do some work on, there's algorithms for those. So
Yeah.
yes, there's a part of the regulation that says, I mean, if there are major complaints, it could trigger. And I guess the question, is it a big enough concern? You know, it's still up to you whether it triggers. So I guess the reporting of it could be done and you could decide, because if it shows up a second time in the same program, it'd be, you know, it can happen once. We know there are reasons. We've had lots of changes of directors. HR sometimes steps in and does changes to processes that don't make any sense, but all of a sudden it's taken out of our hands. So got to figure out a way to make sure that it's all happening. But that's why, you know, it's so. Suggestion was, you know, do we need to present it to you so you know, so that if you feel like it's. Like I said, unlicensed practice of 2 days versus 6 months.
Semester is a big deal versus 2 days.
Yeah.
To 2 days.
Because now the program comes into question, let's just say it was me, it's not me, it's not, let's just say it was me and I'm going to Providence. Okay, and they find out that my clinical instructor is not licensed and they're walking around with 10 kids. Where's that disconnect between us now?
I'm concerned about the contract, it's not wanting to be renewed or.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's,
Rescinded.
again, there's nothing that, I mean, we have contracts that say they, in the contract, it says they will have appropriate faculty oversight, and part of that is being licensed. So, but I'm less concerned, well, I shouldn't say less concerned, still concerned, but just to figure out a way to, I mean, we can do some education, and Carolyn talked about that too. I mean, I can make it more part of, and the e-notify, because I usually do talk about it when I'm out there, because it is, anybody who doesn't, like, anytime that the KSBN process thing comes up and it has to do with licensure verification, that's usually my go-to, is to talk about e-notify for that. Another would be, I mean, could just call into question and have the program, all the programs submit their process, just to make sure everybody's, and just to make sure that awareness is there, that this has happened, and they want to make sure their processes are in place to make sure all of their.
So this has happened.
Yes,
You're saying
It's actually happened.
So,
So I.
More than
Yes,
once.
More than once.
I worry about making every program submit that. I do think us as a committee knowing where it's happened, and at that point, it would be. That's kind of my question is, okay, what is the process to prevent this from happening again? I'll say, from, you know, I sit on the employer side regularly, and I do know that, you know, we've had nurses that have had unlicensed practice. And typically, it's a rare occasion that it goes beyond a few days, so that concerns me that it would be for a length of time, you know, usually it's recognized within a day or two, and we're putting steps in place at that point. So the fact that it would go on for a length of time, to me, plays into that, and that to me is something this committee would like to be aware of, and then, again, it's a factor, it may not be the end all be all, but how did that happen, and, you know, why is the individual not renewing their license? Is it because, you know, CNE and from disciplinary committee, there's a lot of reasons.
Yeah, all kinds.
You know, I mean, so, but that would be my question is, what steps are in place to prevent it from happening, and why did it happen in the first place?
no, because besides the regs, the nurse doing that, knowing that she's unlicensed, it's going against Nurse Practice Act.
Exactly.
Well,
And putting at risk then evaluating a nurse, I mean, there's a lot of pieces then that play into. So, evaluating a nursing practice.
We help a student, you're there on her license, but she doesn't have one.
There's a role model issue too, that but the students, you know, we're role model, faculty are role model, and there was another thing too. is role model.
yeah. Well,
And just if there were legal concerns about a case and the instructor overseeing a student providing care, I can just see the courts. We're just all of a sudden spiraling out of control.
because unlicensed practice is reported. But it doesn't say what they're collecting, so there's that doesn't get reported beyond just the individual. So I can make that part of my report. And, you know, when it happens and there's awareness, may not happen again for.
That's the idea.
But the idea is, yeah, that I think that awareness, and I think the education on e-notify, I plan to continue to include. We do an administrator update every September, so I definitely will be adding that to my update list in terms of things we need to talk about, but
You could put it on the website under the administrators.
I could.
Site too.
That's a great idea.
We would love it, every nurse to be notified, not just
Yeah,
faculty and everything, because literally it will remind you. It will tell you if there's been anything happen with your license, and you may not know that anything's happened with your license, and. It does a great job, because I'm in there and I'll just say, it's free, I mean, it takes you
so
probably
the individual,
2 minutes to sign up.
yeah, the individual can get notified, and then the school has a way to put all their faculty in. So they're also getting notified, so they can do that reminder as well. For their own benefit,
Right.
as a program, and meeting that regulation, that's part of the process.
Because right now they're waiting for the card from the board to remind them.
And they didn't let us know their new
Yeah,
address,
because address is
so it doesn't
correct.
get forwarded.
The mail sometimes is not.
Yeah.
And stuff gets lost.
Yeah.
Right, and stuff gets lost, and they're all relying on that card, the board, and that's.
But maybe an email from e-notify would catch more
I think
attention.
you will.
Oh, yeah.
It's helpful with workforce collection too. So
Yeah,
it's
right.
a very important tool for that.
Great. So do we need to do them?
I know, we put some things out there. I don't know that there needs to be. It's just more direction from you about the process of how you want it handled. And so what I'm hearing is that adding that to my report in terms of if this happens, we'll notify you what schools were involved. And then if there's anything you want other than follow up about education with those programs about e-notify, is there any?
Going back to the program.
Yeah. I have talked to at least one of the two.
Sure, they would want to immediately.
Yeah, right. The other, I think the other question I have, so the other is there anything else? You know, you talked about not wanting to maybe to necessarily include all programs, but it does beg the question, okay, what is your process? So,
When you're doing the site visits, you can validate that as you have been, putting it on your administrator annual update, making sure folks are aware of that, the fact that we're talking about it here. But I don't.
but I mean,
Programs that.
even the
we had
program, even the
handful of-
the programs in question.
Well,
Because that would be one way just to maybe submit.
I think
okay, what
that's
is
up to the committee, the programs that are in question, would be like to see a report back, about
That's a good idea.
what their process is.
Students didn't get wind of this, and they have just kind of very new.
Don't know.
No, I think that programs who are going to have this should have to submit a policy of how this will be prevented in the future. So not to make it penalizing them, but just so they have a proactive approach so this won't happen again. Is it part of their new faculty orientation? Is it part of their yearly requirements? You know, do faculty as they're hired know about the e-notify? So then it puts the onus both on the faculty member and the program. So it's just a quality improvement piece for the programs that are having this problem. Now, if we see the same program 3 times, then the committee
that's up
may
to
need
you,
to
right?
address something differently.
It's like a complaint. If it happens once, it's a complaint. If you get the same complaint about the same thing over and over, there may be more. Okay.
Well, and it's reevaluation of your, I mean, you know, if you have this submit a corrective.
Right.
Action plan, and then it happens again, so what, you know, then I think you have something to go back to, so did you do this and this didn't work, and you need to amend it again, like it just continues that conversation for improvement.
Okay.
And do they address what they've done with that faculty member? That unlicensed faculty member?
Okay. Thank you. I just we felt there was enough of a concern to have some detail.
Okay, unfinished business, board letters regarding pass rates.
Okay, I wasn't sure how to title that. So last month, we looked at the NCLEX pass rates. And our updated regulations had a bit of a change in how first-time pass rates were handled. So our rates moved, and the minimum requirement moved to 80%. So we looked at that, but it also kind of moved up the timeline for when there are issues found for those that might be below for, if in the past, we didn't do anything at 1 year, that was just kind of and then it became 2 years, they got the letter. So that's moved up now. The first year under, they get a letter of concern, they're asked to provide some type of just plan for that they've looked at it. Are they going to make any changes? Kind of what that looks like to address the pass rate. But last time what we talked about were those, we do have some programs that have now been below what I would say below KSBN standard for more than 1 year, because the 80%'s only been in place 1 year. But it's hard to kind of let go of those that were also below 75% for a year or two before that. And so one of the questions that came up was, well, what other factors go into that? Sometimes low numbers cause issues it's hard to get those rates up above a certain amount when you've got 10 or 12 students in a graduating class. So you had asked me to go back and look. I talked a little bit about the NCSBN approval guidelines that kind of give some other warning signs, which we have been looking at with our annual report. That's being part of that course survey. We got that. So what you have in your packet starting on page 268 and 269, those are what I did was add in numbers. So we're looking at programs not only from the percent of their pass rate, but the numbers that were included in that pass rate. So all of our programs that were below 80%, you can see what their numbers were in terms of the number that we're testing. I have also made a note to add that to future. So in September, when I bring the program reports, well, not only we have number of admissions, number of graduates, and I've been adding the NCLEX pass rate to that so that there are numbers. And then next year, when I bring the pass rate report, I will also include numbers on that so that you have that up front. Then what he did on page 271, I kind of went back to the approval guidelines. And so the programs that are on the left are the ones that were under for a year or more. So I included all of them, even though you already acted on anybody who was below last year, whether they are below 1 year, 2 year, 3, all got a letter of concern from the board asking for an improvement plan. So I just so you know that much was done with all of the programs. So what you have here then are the number of approved admits that they have annually. And I think I only put it in for the ones that have been below for more than 1 year also have those numbers and those rates in the years before. So I went back 3 years because that's what we have as part of our record. Then what I included on the end here is that very last column also tells you if they had a new program director in the past academic year, and if they had the changes in the last 5 years. So an X means they had a change in director, and the number behind it means that's the number of changes they've had in the last 5 years. So as you can see, a couple of our programs that have been below 1 or more years have had program director changes. I think NCSBN uses 4. If they've had 4 changes in the last 5 years, 3. Here, down the bottom. Here's the warning. So programs younger than 7 years, they just say they're younger than 7 years, they may need more oversight. So there's an asterisk by those that we don't have. I think Rasmussen is the only one that's younger than 7 years. Full-time faculty less than 35% can be a warning indicator. So I've also put the double asterisk by anybody who has less than there's a column about halfway over that shows the 2022% faculty, full-time faculty rate. So anything that's bolded, if you can see that, but we'll tell you if it's below 35%, it can be a warning. They're not saying that any one of these by themselves, but it can kind of give you an idea. So when you're looking across, you can see, okay, pass rates were low, full-time faculty is low. They've had 5 program director changes. So those are all things that contribute. It's more than 3 directors in 5 years as a warning sign. So I have a couple here that we're interested to do, but I did add them because it is. And then the other thing they kind of look at is if the nursing program director also has responsibility for allied health. So I think I bolded the school names where the nursing program director also has allied health. And so several of ours do. So that's how I put that information together for you. And I also took page 272 this is a summary from our NCSBN annual report from last year. It basically shows all of the programs there and those 5 warning indicators that they use. And I highlighted the programs then for us that were below the pass rate. Again, some of those are 1 year, some of those are 2 or more. So the idea of bringing you the information then is there some action you want to take? The regulation, because we made a change in the percentage, that was one, but whether you want to go ahead and apply the regulation that says if it's 2 to 3 years below, it says you may, it's not a shall, but it could trigger either, do you want something more extensive than just the general improvement plan? Should a site visit be done? That's kind of where your discretion comes in terms of those that were below 2 to 3 years. So we have, I think there's only 3 programs. Rasmussen ADN has been below for 3 years. Seward was below 1, but they had a year up, so they're kind of back to they're just 1 year below. Fort Scott is the other one. They've been below for 2 years. And Cloud, I believe, ADN is below for 2 years. I thought I did a better job of identifying this.
You're kind of gray on there.
Yeah,
Colors just right.
let me.
It looks like Cloud showed improvement.
Yeah,
And they are not meeting now with the adjusted rate still, but they would have met it if they had not adjusted the rate.
Okay, yes, so Cloud was below for 2 years. Coffeyville has been below, ADN has been below for 2 years, Fort Scott below for 2 years. And then Rasmussen ADN has been below for 3 years. And just an additional piece of data I added in there. I've also, a couple of those programs, I've received more than 1 complaint. In one case, the complaint was the same from all of the complainants were the same, and we've addressed that in terms of the initial request for the complaints, and we've asked for a response, and we have gotten a response from them, but just so you know that. And there's another one that just more recently we've gotten some complaints from, and it's more about, it feels disorganized. So I don't know if there are just things going on, the students are feeling more pressure, and sometimes that happens, but just as an extra piece of data. Oh. Coffeyville ADN. I just had a site visit last fall. Fort Scott has not had one. They're due for one, I believe, next year. Rasmussen ADN had one last year ago fall. And Cloud, we haven't, I think we did in 2020, I believe, 2019, because it was before we were on site, it was before the pandemic.
So let me ask this, because of the change to the NCLEX with the next gen that just started in April, I mean, we could be looking at another downward trend like it usually happens anyway with the change. However, a lot of the students say that they actually liked it a lot better and they felt they did better, and some rates are showing it going up. Is that also gonna factor in? So now we've got new regs and next gen coming in.
It probably can, but I think the question is, we've already addressed it with a board letter, and asking for an improvement plan, which, do you want those that are below 2 to 3s? Do you want their program directors to come present to you and talk to you about it? Do you want a focus visit to be done? It's sort of like, I think we're not so worried, I shouldn't say. We've addressed the 1 year below, and it may just be, and we may see more because of that, but I think, just trying to be responsive to our regulations and what you all think is the appropriate thing to do for those programs that. I'm a little concerned for the students in a couple of the programs because they have been getting more calls. They know rates are down. They're not feeling, or they're not passing. So I don't know.
Focus visits would be more opportunity for improvement kind of focus is about.
Yeah, the focus is really focused on whatever the issue is. So in this case, a low pass rate, we could also, because we KSBN, I mean, we have a template for a focus visit, and it really focuses on where there are issues. So the program improvement plan should address. So if they have warning indicators in some places, and it may be that they looked at it and they don't feel like that's an issue, because I do know other plans have some of those warning indicators, but that obviously hasn't been an issue because their rates are doing fine.
It's another set of eyes.
It's just, it's kind of a way to look at it, and it doesn't require the whole, site visit, all the things ahead of time, but it really is looking at specifically at that improvement plan that they've submitted and looking at, because if they've been below for 3 years, I'm hoping they didn't wait till this year to, and I'm pretty sure they haven't. We, like I said, a couple of these, we've actually been out to see them, and we've talked about rates at the time. They had plans for improvement. You could see changes in the program improvement plan, or outcomes plan that it was being addressed. So it did.
So Patty, I think you have a good question. I don't, when you're looking through all of this data, there's a lot here to try to piece it together. There's a couple here that looks like they have been meeting, and then with the increased pass rates, now maybe they've had 1 year, or one of them I think showed. So WOW was not meeting in 2021, and in 2022 did make significant improvements.
If the rate hadn't gone up, yeah, the rate hadn't
would
gone
still
up, it
need
would
it.
have met,
The
but
one that maybe stands out to me is the Rasmussen ADN program, who we now have 3 years, and it's kind of bouncing around. It was. So I guess maybe that might be one, Fort Scott.
they've actually been below for 2, but they've been below fairly significantly for 3 of the last 4. And I know we have that, hopefully a bounce back year, but we've had in the past too, that's been a concern. It's below, it's up, below, and it's like, why can't, where's the consistency? And so that would be just another one.
So Fort Scott's ADN program, it's the 2-year mark. So I don't know, I guess maybe I would suggest a focused review for Rasmussen's ADN program. Fort Scott, we might keep an eye on and see how their 2023 results come out, but that's just me trying to put all of this, I don't know what you all see.
So if you, like you said you had one that you had just been to last fall. So in that case, the corrections wouldn't be there until after this next year would come through. So we don't know that. But if you know that you've got a visit coming up, maybe use that as not only the regular visit, but also focus visit. But if you've got somebody like you just saw them last year, but you're not going to see them for another 5 years,
They're already doing an improvement
and they're
plan.
already doing the improvement plan. I just don't know how it's gonna work in with the regs if we say, but if and.
Well, that, the regulation, like I said, it was made, the intent was to try to address it earlier, because I think what was happening in maybe what we've been seeing is that it can tend to drag out. By the time you get all those things and okay, we're gonna give them, those years add up, and then pretty soon you've got to, it's like, is it fair to the students? You want to address it. If you don't find, if they're doing everything they can, some of the complaints you get from students, it's not fair. It's not, if the policy is being followed. Fair is sort of one of those words that comes up a lot, but I have to say too, and folks are looking at that. There is a balance because of the pass rate. I know programs have looked at their entry requirements, and some of them have gotten tougher to get in. So hopefully those that are getting in, because they want their pass rates too. But on the other hand too, you've got nurses too that will tell you, I didn't do that great at school, but they did great in clinical and they did get past their boards. But so how do you balance for them, it's a balancing act of, I want to try to get all the qualified, and we feel like are the qualified people in here. And those that are struggling, what are we doing to support them? Because maybe academically, they do struggle a little bit, maybe the next gen and the way we're teaching it will help that. But I guess it's sort of those questions.
Questions then, so when I look through this, looking at the number of first-time testers, Rasmussen has a very large number there in comparison to the others. So again, it's a piece of the puzzle. It's not necessarily an end all be all, but I think if we were to go back and do a focused review, and this is just what I'm seeing, Patty, I think Andrew, you all need to say what you see in this data, but I think a focused review for Rasmussen asking, do we have the right number of students in that program based upon and it's not the BSN program, I'm simply asking about the ADN program. Looking at these pass rates.
Right.
That would be my question of a focused review, and I think it's maybe.
Like your suggestion with that one, and again, when was the last time, what was the other one? With visit, been a while?
I have not been on a visit. I've been here 4.5 years.
Obviously, I was also gonna.
So they should be, well, they're accredited that. They've had, then that was the other thing. Last time ASIN came out, we weren't notified, so we didn't know they were.
I would think there for that visit, but we could go a little bit visit too. I like your suggestions of those goals at least.
They can do that.
If it's been a while. Since they've been visiting, yeah. Rest of that's for sure, because they are low.
And admits to grads.
Their attrition is not.
One option that you do have, I believe, in the regs is to take some sort of action. So maybe one of the actions could be based on what you find is their number of approved admissions. Because that is a lot of.
Yes.
And if they're in between visits, I mean, having them come to present their
That's a great
plan
idea.
is
Maybe
good
that's
too.
less
I mean, if you've
tax.
just been there, you're just going there, that's a double stress, but. You can have them come in if they're between, so if they're in year 2 or 3, they come in. I'm just trying to make sure that everything aligns, so that could be an action that actually covers the regs, because we still have to stay within the regs.
Well, I was gonna say, I'm trying to find that really quickly. And
So how about we have Rasmussen and Fort Scott come and present at our next quarterly meeting and share with us their action plans with regards to pass rates, and we probably are gonna have some questions about admission rates compared to graduate rates and just the sheer volume with respect to Rasmussen.
In September. Okay.
Or in Fort Scott, since they haven't had one in forever, maybe they do get to visit.
well, I can still plan for a focus visit.
How about we start with having them come, and then if we
Okay.
determine we need to go visit.
So not yet on that. We're gonna have them come in September.
Okay, how about refresher course requirements?
All right. So last time we talked a little bit, I brought some information about, we were looking at refresher course requirements to see if there was anything we wanted to do in terms of the regulation for required number of hours. We've had a lot of people who have been focusing on those that may not have been in nursing for a while, but had licenses, want to come back, but after 5 years, they have to do the refresher. So we did just, in doing that, our hours are more. We do require a little bit more. Our didactic is 120, which there are a handful of other states that have that. We are the highest in terms of number of clinical hours. There are a handful that have a minimum of like 120, but at 180, we're pretty much the top end there. One of the questions that was asked was about refresher courses. We only have 2 approved refresher courses for RNs and 1 for LPNs. South Dakota State University is an all online didactic, and then they help, they help them through they have to find their own spot to do clinical if they don't want to go to South Dakota. South Dakota will take them up there if they want to go up there. If they can't find a clinical spot, they will take them. But they actually do that for us. Their refresher program requirement at South Dakota State is actually 80 and 80. So they do the 120, 180 hours for us to make sure that those students can meet requirements. Newman University is the other one that does a program. They are site bound. So if you go to that program, you have to do clinical in Wichita. So those that live there, that's great. Those that don't, Johnson County used to have one, doesn't anymore. So what is here is when I went to look for are there other things out there for them to do in terms of a refresher course that could meet requirements? I didn't find a lot. And the ones I found that could come anywhere close to meeting requirements, and most of them don't meet our requirements, but there are a handful that could potentially, if we talk to them, I mean, I could talk to them about, because they do it for other states, they have different requirements. But I also looked at the cost. South Dakota State University is just a little under 2,000. Their PN is 1,700. Their RN is 1,900 to do all of our hours. And I did find Minnesota State. I did find cost on that. It's actually the most reasonable. It's 1095 for that course, and it's a little bit different. Like I said, different states have different requirements, but none of them are as high as ours in terms of clinical. But if they already do a variety, they probably could handle if we decided to keep that. So this is information for you to decide, do we want to do anything with the refresher course requirements in terms of the number of hours, or do you want to keep it? And the other question would be, do you want me to pursue any other courses? Some of these, like I said, I don't even know if they would all accept us. These are just ones that I found, and it was difficult. It was more difficult than I thought. You can find a lot of refresher that are didactic only. But having that clinical piece ups the ante, and not everybody has the capacity to do that.
How many people do we have to, how many people have we had to refreshers?
You would ask me that. Yes, right now, I'm trying to think with South Dakota State. I should have looked more recently, Patty, but I get probably 3 or 4 a month for new requests. Wow. From, and South Dakota State always notifies me when they have somebody new start. And then they let us know when they complete, and then they also let me know if they've dropped out. And and there are a handful, I mean, of those. There's a percentage, and I'd have to get you the numbers for sure, but
They ask for their license, they can do that.
well, how it works is South Dakota, they do all of the didactic online up front. As soon as we get a letter from South Dakota State that says they've completed all their didactic, they apply for their license with us. It sits in a pending status while they do their clinical. And then once they finish, we get notification of completion of clinical, that they've done all of their hours and that they've gotten a good report. That's what it takes to complete. Then the license can be reissued or reinstated. I mean, the other thing that there is a state that does is there, like I said, there are several online didactic. I don't know if it would be feasible to work with anybody within the state to try to see if anybody's willing to set up to help with the clinical refresher piece, so that the folks that do the hours of the online, approved, still needs to be approved, but there might be more we could approve, at least for the didactic component. And some of these are broken down. You can take the didactic component separately, so the costs are separate for both. And then do a complete and online component with another program, separate different. But again, those are just ideas. And I don't know, what we'd be able to do. Like I said, I've looked at Refresher, a handful of them since I've been here. I'll get notification on one, and as soon as I get them, I call them and to talk to them, and it's like, oh, well, we can't meet your requirement. Sorry. So I guess the twofold question, there's kind of two. One, do we leave the refresher requirements the same? That's kind of what brought it to the committee. That's one of the actions we said we could take. When legislature was looking at how can we get more nurses back into nursing for those who've been out a while. The other thing is there are states that do refresher. And if you've been out 5 years, 5 to 10 years, you get to do this. If you've been out more than 10, then it's sort of like the petition. If you've been two to 3 years, you get this. If you've been out, if you haven't passed and it's 3 to 5 years, you get a little bit more to make sure you're hopefully. So those are all options. And if you need more time to absorb it, this is what I found, and it may be that.
I think you may have brought this before, but I need this side by side is what other states do. And how can we?
You want her to bring that next time?
Yeah,
I did.
I think that'd be great. So
I should have just stuck it in there and
bring all of that, and then maybe we can. Maybe we can talk about this and come up with a recommendation to start at least to start with, and then we can manipulate it from there. Okay. But let's bring it back to. Site visit guidance.
Okay. Last time I brought you a change to the site visit guidelines that I had requested. The accreditation agencies are using online virtual resource rooms for all the documentation. And last time we talked about it, we started talking about security and this and that and the other. And what I realized is in presenting it as a must do this, what I was really requesting, and that's what I brought back in the draft, is that the documents that are put in virtual resource rooms for our survey or for surveyors, that they do that for KSBN as well. Now, ASIN and CCNE and CNEA all have their own repositories. We do not. Rather than making that a security thing and figuring out how to do all that, is that most programs have just created those resource rooms within their LMS systems. Documents don't have to go anywhere. They're just moved to where they can be accessible and they're secure in their system. They give us a password for the 2 to 4 weeks or however long they're going to give it to us. Because usually what I'm requesting is 2 weeks ahead of time that be available. It makes our on-site a lot more reasonable when we've been able to review documentation, because then we can ask questions. We can meet with people rather than having to spend half the time in document review versus talking with the folks that are there. So the request for the change to the guidelines is that we ask them to do that. If for some reason they do not have a way to securely do that, I think most of them have an LMS system, but if for some reason they can't, they can call me and request to do that differently. We're not going to make it a mandatory, so that they would just continue to do the documents the same way. Those are usually smaller programs. If they may not have the IT support to do that, or the faculty to do that. So my request is really just to make this. I would like this to end up being But I wanted to do it in the least disruptive way to them and to us in terms of documentation. If there are things like audit reports that need to be more secure, then they leave it within their own systems.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So that's really the only change to the guidelines is that, and it now changes it to, and if they have an issue with it, they can just let me know and we will figure out a way to do it. Thank you.
That can just come as direction from the committee. How about the IEN credentialing verification?
Okay, so I'd asked at one point, I've been talking with, we have right now, CGFNS is our only professional evaluation company that does credentialing evaluation for internationally educated nursing students. So if they're coming and they have their undergraduate education for licensing in another country, other than the US or US territories, then they're required to do a CGFNS evaluation. And what that does is provides us evaluation of their transcripts. So it gives us all our information that we require internally in terms of the number of hours of nursing courses, all of their prerequisite courses to make sure they have content and curriculum that's appropriate for our regulation. CGFNS has kind of been the gold standard for nursing because it was nursing. There are a lot of nurses who've been involved in that process, but there are a lot of companies now that are doing more. So I had one approach and I've been talking with them. They are the biggest issue became when CGFNS just got overwhelmed. And we were seeing longer and longer wait times, and it was really frustrating for those that are doing credentialing. When I look on nursing board websites, most of them have multiple ways of, and I can look at other companies too. This is just one that I looked at. The difference is, and there is that CGFNS does have it's about $400, $485 to get an evaluation done. It is expensive. You can pay more and have it expedited. It's about double if you do that. And expedited could mean a week sooner. It doesn't necessarily mean next week. You can also pay, if you aren't sure whether you're going to need the report again, you can pay more to have it available like 5 years down the road if I move to another state and I need that original report or I need a verification. They don't keep them on hand longer than a year or two. And then you have to have a new one done, so you're paying again. Some of the questions, so that's what on page 282 is I asked some questions of Spantran is the one that we're looking at. They online. There are several boards of nursing that use them. I've gone out to their websites, looked at their process. I've talked to these folks. They've talked to me about what our requirements are because their basic one is fairly inexpensive. But because we ask for that credential, we have to look more specifically at the curriculum. It probably wouldn't end up being a lot. It'd probably still be around $400, but their turnaround is about 1 to 2 weeks once they have all the information and it puts it on the student to make sure, or the applicant to make sure they have all the information, but they get it to us. They also keep theirs on file. So if the applicant, 4 or 5 years down the road needs a new copy of that, they can ask and they don't have to pay again to have that evaluation done. Because once that program evaluation is done, their nursing program doesn't change. What they had as their basic education is still their basic education.
So what other states are using this?
I looked at Kentucky, Georgia, Nebraska. I only looked at a handful, and those are the ones I looked at in terms of Spantran. I think there are about 20 boards total that use Spantran. There are more than 30 that have multiple. They're not all the same ones. CGFNS is pretty much in all of those. This is just a
CGFNS is called the gold standard.
It is the gold standard. I mean, that's what we've used for a long time. I think what Janelle said, I think they kind of got overwhelmed. However, they have put together a process with NCSBN so that I believe the information is going to be much easier. I don't know if you want to speak to it or.
I have seen some things.
Put a few words out there, we're working with these organizations, with NCSBN, with the board of directors. And so sometimes it's good to ensure that they have all the security in place. It sounds like this particular group probably works with a lot of boards, so they probably do have that, but it's a lot of times important to make sure that they're doing the primary source verifications at the time of the application instead of archiving it for 3-4 years and things happen over that time. So, doing the due diligence before we accept anybody else. There's Joseph Silney's, there's all sorts of other groups out there.
Well, and another thing too is they could also come and present to you if they continued. I brought it because it was asked if, I get a lot of questions from not only the applicants, but people who might represent.
So CGFNS does take a long time from the employer perspective to get that information. We hear that frequently. Adrian, could we maybe ask that you bring back to our next meeting what NCSBN is doing? And I know that we heard at our last meeting that there was, I think, a task force starting, or there was some work being done. And then what other states are using Spantran and or is there another recommendation? Is there a number 2 that, and if Spantran's it, great, but maybe we can have.
Possibly, NCSBN doesn't like pick vendors over another.
Right.
It would be, basically just information about the different ones. I'm sure there's probably some information that I can get.
But then basing on security, and then like you said, are they doing primary source verification at the
Right.
time of the request versus?
And there's new requirements for the state of Kansas that go into effect, I believe, this week. That with information security being such a heightened thing, we have to ask all our vendors to fill out all of these system security plans and those sorts of things. So before we engage in any business with somebody, we would need to do that step as well, even if there's no financial, bids or anything like that. If it's just a cut and dry, anything that has nursing information that might be considered with us, we have to have them fill out that information before we can use them.
And in all fairness, I think also to CGF, not that I'm sticking up to them, but it is becoming very difficult to get the information out of some of the countries. I mean, you realize their nurses are coming to the United States, so that means they don't have enough nurses. And the ones that are in war, if it's ones who do not like the United States, it's very difficult to get this information. And it's not CGFNS fault, it's just what's going on in the world right now.
I think it'd just be nice to have, maybe a little bit more information about what is the recommendation for us and do most states have more than one option? And if we need to consider a second option?
I think that is the trend that is starting. I have heard from different nursing boards as recently as last week when I was asking some of them about this topic. That some are being approached by new vendors, and it's for the very same reasons, just because, they're getting political pressure for speed and people getting in, so.
And also what other options are out there. I know that one thing that was discussed at the last NCSBN meeting was just allowing them to retake the NCLEX. And if they pass the NCLEX, then do we, and I don't, that doesn't validate all of the components that we do for our own graduates in the United States. So I'm not saying that I think that that's should be, but maybe that's something we discuss.
And from a continuity perspective, it is a private organization, so they've obviously been in place for a long time, but if anything were ever to occur to, let's say, CGFNS, God forbid, we would be without anyone that was approved.
Right.
And so having those multiple layers does provide us with a little bit of.
I can pretty easily get this, from the states. I mean, just other education directors are always really good about sharing from their own state, how many different ones they work with.
We may have a list.
Because I have a list of like about 20 of them, because those are the ones I reviewed, and it probably would have been helpful. Sorry. I'm just trying to kind of look at, and Spantran has been, like I said, more than, I've also, Joseph Silney is another one that multiple, they're a little bit smaller company, but again, the questions I don't know to ask, and that's why they have to have a second time around to make sure that all those other things are. But because of the number of boards, I would bet they have a response to your security question as well.
So we can bring more.
Thank you. Nursing and MHT program site visit schedule, 23.
Now, as you can see, it's not necessarily slowing down. I am gonna have some changes to the schedule because we have had some changes to the configuration of the board, and we have, I think at least one member who's currently on who will not be after September. Terms are up and out of reterms as well. So what you're seeing here is just what the schedule looks like right now for this fall and next spring. We're working on them as well. And where I have holes in the schedule, and I'll be talking with folks. I'll just be talking with you about it because I am going to have some changes with that.
Madam Chair, I'm just throwing out a suggestion on this 5-year legislative review. As I told you, the process is gonna have to change. And I'm hoping perhaps we can start the new process in September. So if we did this one today, we're gonna have to turn around.
Why don't we table that?
Like, it's a suggestion.
We put it on there because we did at the beginning of the year, so.
Absolutely. Okay, let's look at our petitions for permission to test and retest. Anybody has any questions? I think. Trying to read.
I move to approve the petition for permission to test retest summary from February 18th, 2023 through May 19th, 2023, which includes Tiffany Barbosa, Edith Paez, Kylie Williams, Trina Winkler, Shanika Thompson, Alondra Aviles Diegos, and Gabriel Apple.
Perfect. You have a motion. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying yes.
Yes.
Any opposed signify by saying no. Any abstentions? Agenda for September 2023, we have our annual reports, education annual report, and then NCSBN annual report for data. I think we're going to talk more about, we'll have some follow-up from Rasmussen College and having them come present as well as Fort Scott. We'll talk more about refresher courses, maybe look at some of that
Data side by side.
Okay. And then the IEN credentialing verification to talk about different options there, maybe look at what NCSBN has recommended. What else did we forget?
LMHT,
LMHT,
and then the 5-year legislative review. Okay. I'll be bringing information. Yeah, it's not gonna be 5 years.
our nursing scholarship as well.
I think all we'll need to do then is I'll just be asking for volunteers because through the process we have now, we have it all decided and I can get that information out.
Okay. Anything else we need to discuss? Okay. With that, we'll adjourn our June meeting of the Education Committee. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
See you in a minute.